And now on Radio 4, it's time to celebrate a 35th birthday.
Welcome to this special edition of Just a Minute. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, it is with tremendous pleasure that I greet our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, to this special anniversary edition of Just a Minute, celebrating 35 uninterrupted years. And we are back at the Playhouse Theatre in London, which is on the edge of West End Theatreland, where we did the very first recording all those 35 years ago. And we have a very distinguished audience, some important people from the BBC, naturally, some amazing representatives of the glitterati of show business, as well as a number of very distinguished people who have appeared in the show in the past and who have come back to take part today. We naturally welcome back the man who was in the original pilot. He's taken part in almost as many shows as myself. And he is that clever, articulate, skillful, and sometimes acerbic, but always entertaining Clement Freud. And someone who's played with great success in the early recordings, giving the unruly boys on the team then a run for their money. Since then, she's been so busy with theatre work, she's only recently found time to return. We are delighted that she's back with us tonight. That is that lovely actress, Sheila Hancock. And in the 80s, the new generation of comedians joined us. And in 1988, one from the Comedy Store Players, one of their brightest stars, our youngster, who our producer then gave one show to, but immediately he was so successful, he's been asked back regularly since. He's a man with an incredibly sharp wit, great comic inventiveness, and on occasions, surreal bursts of humour. It is Paul Merton, and he has returned. And finally, our fourth panellist, who first gained experience playing this game in a stage version at the Edinburgh Fringe many years ago. It stood him in good stead because in recent years he's become one of our most popular television stars with his engaging and sometimes outrageous humour. A man I have described as the leprechaun of comedy. Yes, it is the lovable Graham Norton. Please welcome all four of them! And as usual, I am going to ask them to speak on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from that subject. Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who's going to help me keep the score. She will blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And we have one or two innovations in this show, which is not in an hour long, and we have one or two distinguished people in the audience who have played the game before. And we're going to ask one or two of them to set one or two of the questions, the subjects, I should say. So Malcolm Messiter's with us. Now, he is the son of Ian Messiter, who created this amazing game.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to have you with us. And would you like to set a subject for Paul Merton?
Yes, I think the subject's going to be just a minute in the year 2050. I'm sure it'll be still running then.
Well, what confidence you have, Malcolm. I'm delighted about that. Yes, it gives me... I don't know what I'll be doing in 2050, but I hope I'm still around. Anyway, yes, what a lovely subject. Paul, will you tell us something about Just a Minute in 2050, starting now?
In the year 2050, they'll be saying, well, of course, Just a Minute, what a popular programme that was in the 20th and the 21st century. Poor old Nicholas Parsons, he went mad in the end, you know. Married a goat and lived in Reigate for 15 years. Never the same man again. Clement Freud, wonderful raconteur, he ended up changing his name to Dolly Clackett and living in West End as a high-class prostitute. What an extraordinary story it was. Who would have thought those humble beginnings would have led to such a tortuous existence in the end? Sheila Hancock, of course, became Queen, and it was considered an extraordinary piece of promotion, but everybody's very happy because she looked so very good on the stamps. And Graham Norton also, as you remember, married Liz Hurley, a shock announcement of the show called Gyles. And they later had 15 kids that then appeared on QVC shopping channel television. Whereas Paul Merton died a sad, lonely alcoholic after abusing everybody else in the show. But I think what they'll say is it's a magnificent institution. The fact that it's been going for 35 years, and wouldn't it be...
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Repetition of 35 years.
You did have the 35 years before. Right at the beginning. It is the rules of the game. It's a legitimate challenge. I know you love what he was doing, and he does need resounding applause for it. Incredible. He went for... Oh, yes, you went for 56 seconds. No, we don't interpret that as meanness. We say that is the rules, and Clement, you've got in with a correct challenge of a repetition. So you get a point for that, of course. And you haven't won any friends in the audience, but you take over the subject. 4 seconds to go. Just a minute in 2050, starting now.
I shall...
Paul challenge.
Oh, hesitation, I'm afraid.
Because the audience clapped and they enjoyed what you did, we'll give you a bonus point because you didn't get anything for those 56 seconds. That's the least I can do. But Clement was interrupted. It wasn't hesitation. He gets another point, and he has 3.5 seconds. Just a minute in 2020, Clement, starting now.
I shall be 126 years old, and I...
So at the end of the first round, Clement Freud got a number of points, so naturally he's in the lead. Right. In our audience, we have Gyles Brandreth, who has played the game with tremendous skill and panache in the past. He's now, of course, doing his show in the West End of London. But, Gyles, have you got a subject for Graham Norton?
Yes, Nicholas. When I was a boy, my contemporaries chose James Dean as their role model, or Che Guevara, whereas I chose Nicholas Parsons. And I think that explains everything that's happened to me since. It certainly explains why, as you say, I'm appearing in the West End in a golden codpiece, black stockings, and a purple suspender belt. So I'm following your example. And as a tribute to you, Nicholas, style icon, guru, life coach, the subject I am offering is suspenders.
Suspenders, then. Suspenders is the subject, Graham. Can you go on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
In America, suspenders are what we call braces and help to keep men's trousers up, whereas in Britain, they tend to encourage gentlemen to remove their lower garments when they see a lovely lady, bow wow, in a frilly, elasticated thing wrapped round her thigh to keep her stockings...
Sheila, challenge.
They're not actually wrapped around your thigh. They're wrapped around your pelvis. Your thigh is your leg, and suspenders have to have something to suspend on.
Very good point.
But aren't they? What's that thing? What is that thing then?
That's a garter.
That's the garter.
See, I thought the other thing was the garter belt.
No.
And frankly, why the hell would I know this stuff?
Well, exactly.
You've yet to appear in the Rocky Horror Show, and then you discover all about it. But Sheila...
I'm surprised I haven't myself.
Yes.
But...
Anyway, Sheila knew what she was talking about. It's a correct challenge, Sheila. You have the subject of suspenders, and you have 38 seconds starting now.
Well, I personally am very fond of suspenders. I prefer them to wearing tights, because I love the feeling of silk petticoat on the top of my thighs and the air around my...
Well, Paul's challenge saved you there, I think, Sheila. So, Paul, what was your challenge?
Decency in broadcasting.
Well, you
Well,
certainly
you know
said...
what I mean. I couldn't think of the word.
I know.
Thank God for that.
So, Paul, a correct challenge, 25 seconds available, suspenders starting now.
Albert Pierpoint, the last hangman in Britain, could judge a man's weight by simply shaking hands with him, and what he would do on the night of a hanging would knock on the former prisoner's door and shake his hand.
And Graham challenge.
He said hello again. He shook his hand too many times.
Shake.
Yeah, shake.
Yes,
Shook hand.
That's right,
Duh.
yes. Right, great. Yes. You have suspenders back with you, 12 seconds starting now.
Suspenders are sort of New Zealand backpackers who love...
Sheila challenge.
Bit of a hesitate.
Yes,
Had an
There was a bit of a hesitation.
You're not very good
yes.
on suspenders, are you, Graham?
No. Sheila, you had a correct challenge. You've got 7 seconds. Suspenders starting now.
When I was very young, you learnt to wear stockings with suspenders.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of stockings.
You said stockings before,
Did
Sheila.
I?
Yes,
Oh.
unfortunately you did. So Paul's got in with a sharp challenge there. 4 seconds to go. Suspenders with you, Paul, starting now.
Some people think the finest suspender material in the world is undoubtedly concrete.
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. This occasion it was Paul Merton. So with the other points in that round, he's gone one ahead of Clement Freud into the lead, followed by Sheila Hancock and Graham Norton. And the next subject I'm going to give, and it's for you, Sheila, it's my inner child. Something warm and touching. Will you talk on that subject? 60 seconds starting now.
Well, this is a subject that I do know a bit about because I spent quite a lot of time coming to terms with my inner child. I went to groups who told me that owing to the fact that I'd had a difficult childhood, that was why I was a vile adult. And if I could only come to terms with the fact... Oh, I've done that twice.
Yes, you have. Right, Graham, your light came on first, so we're going to hear about your inner child now.
Great.
And there are 41 seconds starting now.
My inner child appears to be very hungry. Yesterday, he ate 25 party sausage rolls. I wish I was joking, but no. Savaged them down. He's also a little unruly and often doesn't tidy my stomach properly. And I don't know what he gets up to sometimes either. Stop me.
Sheila challenge.
He doesn't know what he's talking
No,
about.
you're quite right.
Well,
Right.
the amusing thing in just a minute is, as long as you keep going, you don't hesitate, repeat anything, or deviate, you don't need
He
actually...
went...
No, I didn't.
No.
I never did that.
When
Yes.
you hear the recording, you'll hear that you went...
And Sheila, I'll phone you and apologise. But for now, I don't think I did that.
And actually, Graham, I don't think you did either. We're still with you, Graham, having got another point. 25 seconds starting now.
My inner child is obsessed by and an expert on suspenders. That child can rant on for hours about the difference between a garter, who'd confuse that, with the thing that could be wrapped around a woman's thigh, and I've forgotten what that's called.
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of thigh.
You had the thigh before.
In the last round.
Yes, that's right. Well, the last round. I didn't have it in this round, you know.
We'll fill this hour-long special quite quickly if we can't repeat words we've said in our life.
I know. I think it was the mere mention of the word thigh, and Clement came to life, and so... So, an incorrect challenge again. 7 seconds still with you, my inner child, Graham, starting now.
My inner child is called Robert, but I call him Bob, because we're kind of close.
Paul, challenge.
No, I was going to called and called. It's two different words, in fact, but I was trying a different interpretation
Recalled
of the
and
rules.
called, yes.
Yeah,
He
sounds
cleverly said recalled and called, yes. So either he did it deliberately to confuse you and get a point, I don't know, or else...
Why didn't you ask him?
Did you? Did you do it deliberately? No, we didn't. Obviously, it's all from his face. So, 3 seconds, still with you, Graham. Surging forward, my inner child, starting now.
My inner child is called Shirley. She started to die.
Paul.
Repetition of called.
Yes.
Clearly, I'm psychic.
Yeah, yes. Well, I
did that to confuse you.
Yeah, I was confused.
I
You
could see
confused, Nicholas.
all your thumbs going on your buzzers at the same time, but the one who presses infinitesimally ahead of the others gets the light in front of me, and it was Paul. So, Paul, you've got in with 1 second to go on my inner child, starting now.
Seafood.
So Paul got another point for speaking to the whistle when another one's in that round. He's still in the lead, but Graham Norton got a lot of points in that round. He's only in second place now, only 1 point behind. Then Clement Freud, 2 points behind, and then Sheila Hancock, 3 points behind. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject here is Auld Lang Syne. New Year's Eve is just gone. And we're going to sing... No, we're not. We're going to hear Clement talk about Auld Lang Syne starting now.
If someone were to ask me, should old acquaintance be forgot? On the whole, I would say yes. Auld Lang Syne is on the Carlisle Road and is a post which directs you to Auld Lang. I've never myself...
Paul.
Hesitation. Stop. Did you hear him, Nicholas? He stopped.
No, for once I wasn't concentrating. I was getting a message. And so I don't get many
From the
messages.
other world? Does the name Elvis Presley mean anything to anybody here?
It was coming from another world, and since it was from our producer in the box, and so I didn't concentrate for a moment. I have to ask you, to be honest, Clement, did you pause?
No, you're wrong. I was mistaken.
Yes. No. He could.
Yes, I did.
He struggled. He struggled to be dishonest, which I think's a great quality. But Paul, You have the correct challenge, and you have 38 seconds. Auld Lang Syne, starting now.
Well, I very much agree with what Clement said.
Graham challenge.
I was sensing a hesitation.
You've got it right. And you've got the subject, Auld Lang Syne, and 35 seconds starting now.
Auld Lang Syne is a traditional Scottish expression.
Paul
It's
challenge.
like slur of the words there.
It was a slur of the
There was a
words,
slur.
yes.
Did you notice it, Nicholas?
I noticed
At
it.
the beginning of the show, did anyone mention no slurring?
Yeah, it's that sort of hesitation.
I don't think a slurring is hesitation. I think if you elongate to the extent that it does sound like hesitation, I would give it. But on this occasion, I think it was
So
a
slurring's allowed?
No, a gentle slur.
A gentle slur. So what's the
And
difference?
also, it is traditional to slur the word Scottish.
Yes.
There is.
Graham, you have the benefit of the doubt. You have 33 seconds. You have Auld Lang Syne still starting now.
Auld Lang Syne is a Celtic expression meaning, can I have the number for local minicab, please? Certainly, that seems to be the only useful thing it could mean on New Year's Eve. I said mean twice.
Paul challenge.
Well, Graham got it just before me. He said mean twice.
You said mean before.
Yes, I did.
You did. Correct challenge, Paul. 22 seconds available. Auld Lang Syne with you starting now.
Well, I haven't really got anything to what Clement added.
Clement challenge.
Repetition of Clement.
He never goes for the obvious. Well done, Clement. 19 seconds. Auld Lang Syne's with you again, starting now.
I haven't really got much to add to what Paul Merton said.
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Well, he was obviously going to stop. And anyway, if he hasn't got anything to say, I'll say something.
Well, he didn't. If I'm going to be scrupulously fair, he didn't actually stop at that moment.
No.
So, really, to be fair, and I must always be fair to everybody, Clement, it's another point to you, and you carry on if you want to. 15 seconds, Auld Lang Syne, starting now.
What Sheila Hancock was going to say is that Auld Lang Syne...
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of say.
Yes, you did say before.
Say Paul Merton, say Sheila Hancock.
Yes, that's right.
said.
You don't need to emphasise it, Paul. I did hear it. 11 seconds. It was only once I stopped listening, and...
But it was for 35 years.
Oh, they are wicked. And you rotten lot out there applaud him. Paul, 11 seconds. Auld Lang Syne, starting now.
I think many perhaps the hand and Leon.
I wasn't understanding it.
No, nor was I. And I think we call that deviation from English as we
I
understand
call
it.
that a gentle slur.
Yeah, that's what it was.
No, there was no slurring. It was completely unintelligible.
As opposed to slurring.
As opposed to slurring.
Slurring is intelligible. Just
no,
write that down. Slurring is intelligible. New rule.
If I was to say Paul Merton...
Yeah,
it's
you'd
still...
be having a stroke.
No,
but you're not saying that. So,
And how unlucky would that be on this special night?
Yeah.
You'd fill an hour, though.
Yeah.
9 seconds. It's with you, because I agree with your challenge. Yes.
Oh, yes, of course it is.
It's Auld Lang Syne. 9 seconds, starting now, Graham.
Auld Lang Syne, lest old acquaintance be forgot.
Have we had all this before? Old acquaintance?
No,
Not by me.
No, by him. As Clement talked about old
Oh,
acquaintance.
I knew I'd heard it somewhere.
Yes. 4 seconds, still with you, Graham. Auld Lang Syne, starting now.
As a child, listening to this beautiful melody on New Year's Eve, I would...
So, Graham Norton, with the subject and getting points on the subject, including one for speaking as the whistle went, has surged forward. He's now in the lead, one ahead of Paul Merton and a few ahead of Clement, Freud and Sheila Hancock in that order. And in our audience, we have the lovely Jenny Eclair. And Jenny's come to support us. She's supported us by being brilliant in the show on a number of occasions. The microphone is in front of her. Jenny, would you please give a subject to Graham Norton?
Oh, sorry, Graham, this is fiendishly difficult. Speaking in tongues. I'm sorry, Doug. That shirt is so wasted on radio.
I should explain to our listeners that Graham is wearing one of the outrageous shirts he wears on his television series, and in fact, it's a complete see-through.
It is not!
It is.
No, Sheila Hancock was backstage going, I can see your nipples. I was like, get away, back off!
Well, I can see them from here, Graham,
Oh,
actually.
because you're staring. It's covered in sequins. It's sort
I
of
know, but nipples covered in sequins are very exciting. Anyway, let's...
Now I feel sick.
Graham, speaking in tongues, 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
If you wish to be heard, I find that speaking in tongues isn't a great idea, as ears are specially designed for the listening bit of the head. However, speaking in tongues can be a friendly, some might say overly familiar thing to do, especially if it's a stranger on the Underground Railway, for instance. They ask for directions, and you reply by speaking in their tongue. They often misinterpret this as unwanted attention, nay, even a sexual advance. I say, no, I'm simply being friendly in an Irish way. Because, of course, in the Emerald Isle, from whence I come, my mother still lives there, thanks for asking, it is a beautiful way of chatting to someone while sipping some saliva. Ooh, it's hot in Southern Ireland.
Oh, Sheila challenge.
I don't think he knows what speaking with tongues is.
It doesn't matter, he was keeping going without hesitation, repetition, or deviation.
What is he on about?
Graham?
Yes?
I disagree with the challenge.
Fine.
So you still have speaking in tongues, and you have 8 seconds starting now.
Speaking in tongues is something that occurred in the Bible, when suddenly people could speak French, German, and all sorts of languages.
Clement challenged.
Suddenly.
Suddenly, you did say suddenly before. When you were talking about, you suddenly met this person there.
I believe you.
Yes. Clement's got in with 3 seconds ago on speaking in tongues, starting now.
Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and have no charity.
So Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's moved forward. He's just behind Paul Merton, and Graham Norton is still in the lead. And Sheila Hancock, it's your turn to begin. Here's a nice subject for you, Nelson's column. Tell us something about Nelson's column in this game, starting now.
Well, just up the road from here is Trafalgar Square, which is being pedestrianised so that you can see Nelson's column even clearer. It is about 180 feet tall, and Nelson himself is quite tall.
Oh, challenge, yes.
Repetition of tall.
Yes, he was too tall, yes. In fact, he's quite small when you look up there, isn't he?
He's not. He's actually quite big.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I'll look up there. I'll nip up there afterwards and have a look. Right. 45 seconds for you, Paul, after a correct challenge on Nelson's column, starting now.
Police were called to Trafalgar Square late on Saturday night, where the TV personality and radio host Nicholas Parsons was found attempting to climb the column. When he was arrested, he said, "I wanted to see if he was big or small." He was taken to Cannon Street Station, where he was later...
Clement. Oh, I know. You wanted him to go on that one, didn't you? Just because it was mocking me, wasn't it?
Don't ask a leading question, Nicholas.
26 seconds, Clement. Nelson's column, starting now.
Lord Kitchener, who is a calypso singer, had a song about Trafalgar Square in which he says it epitomizes, talking about Nelson's column, the nation's plight, and epitomizes it.
And, oh, you're doing it for all of them now, isn't that lovely? Paul, you challenge.
It was epitomizes
He
twice.
was epitomizing
No.
too much, yes. And it's a word that hasn't been used much
I
in
said
this series.
epitomize and epitomizes. Quite deliberately.
If he says he did it deliberately, then, you know, I withdraw if you want.
I will give you the benefit of the doubt. I must say there was a touch of slur there, so I wasn't much. 12 seconds with you, still, Clement. Nelson's column, starting now.
The words I said before, from a very great height. It rather loses the impact.
Paul, challenge.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation, yes. And this time you're in there, Paul. More on Nelson's column. 5 seconds, starting now.
The pigeons used to fly around the top of Nelson's head, and he was very upset. So one day...
Paul was then speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now 1 ahead of Graham Norton and 3 ahead of Clement Freud and 1 or 2 ahead of Sheila Hancock. And Charles Collingwood is in our audience, who played the game for us in Edinburgh a couple of years ago. And, of course, a lot of you will know him better from The Archers as Brian. You see, we do have a Radio 4 fan listening club here. They know what you're doing, Brian, and they don't approve, but...
yes, they do.
I do. It livens the Archers up no edge. I like it.
But as Charles Collingwood, would you like to give Clement Freud a subject?
I would. I've been lucky enough to play Brian Aldridge for 27 years, and during the last 12 months, Brian has had the most delicious love affair with Siobhan Hathaway, which has produced a gorgeous little child. Clement, would you be good enough to speak on the subject of holding the baby?
Clement, it's holding the baby. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
It is essential to hold it the right way up. And quite easy to find out where is what by the dampness at one end and the hair, which might be a tubber.
Sheila Hancock, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, Sheila. Holding the babies with you, and you have 46 seconds. Tell us something about that subject, starting now.
I think I can honestly say that possibly the happiest times of my life have been when I've been holding the baby, either my own or now my grandchildren.
Clement challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
It's talking about babies.
You only hold one at a time.
You didn't make that clear.
I was confused. I thought you were juggling with me. I was confused.
Yeah, I'm so reluctant, Sheila, to give it away.
Don't you dare give it to them. That was an outrageous challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah. Right. So, having been intimidated by our audience and Sheila Hancock, 36 seconds, holding the baby, Sheila Hancock, starting now.
Holding the baby is a great joy because they smell so lovely. And don't interrupt, because they do.
They smell.
No, Clement, I won't allow it because she talked about holding the baby and then she was using the collective phrase, they
That's
smell so
right.
lovely, about babies in general, but she didn't repeat the word anything else. No, I'm with you, Sheila. You've still got holding the baby and you've got 31 seconds starting now.
Its skin is as soft as a butterfly's wing. I'm always tempted to bite it because they are so deliciously sweet and gorgeous and...
Paul challenge.
This is cannibalism. You can't go with Radio 4, January the 1st, go around eating babies. What would they think of this in China, Nicholas? You're an expert. What would they think?
Well, we do get the letters from China.
You get the letters, don't you?
Yes, we do get the letters, and they do get confused by some of the traditions and mores of our
Well, they'll think
society.
that's a tradition, eating the baby over here. That's no good, is it?
I think she conveyed that that's what she's tempted to do, but she didn't carry through the action. That's the way
Are you
I
sure?
understand
I do bite
Because,
it, actually.
Oh, my God.
Yes,
Again am I defending you, Sheila, and now you put me right in it. Right,
with
yes.
love.
I've
You know
heard
what
many mothers
women know
say,
what I mean, don't you? You know,
yes,
delicious.
every mother has
Their
said,
little
will say,
bums.
yes, it's so delicious. I like to put my teeth in it. I've never heard of a mother who has bitten her baby, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt again, Sheila. Because
How much have I got now?
You're getting lots of points, Di.
But
That's
I
the most
know, but
important
how
thing.
long have I got to talk?
21 seconds.
Oh, my God. Surely I've talked longer than that.
No, you've been interrupted most of the time.
You'll be a teenager by the time you finish.
21 seconds, Sheila, starting now.
I have a particularly clever way to hold the baby, which is going to be difficult to demonstrate on radio, but you sit it down.
Graham challenge.
I just thought I'd save you the trouble.
I was going to try.
It's another incorrect challenge. Sheila got another
Yeah,
point. You're
right.
doing well, right. 16 seconds holding the baby, starting now.
Then you form a Y with your forefinger and thumb and put it under the baby's chin and pat its back, and you'll find that the burps come up marvellously, rather than all that business of putting it on your shoulder, because then it sicks down your back. This way.
So, Sheila Hancock.
I'm so overexcited, I actually ran out of breath then.
I know.
I nearly died on
You
air.
obviously enjoyed the subject, and you managed to keep it, and with the generosity of some of the team, and you were speaking as a whistle went, you leapt forward, but alas, you're still in fourth place. But... No, but it was a huge leap. She's only 1 point behind Clement Freud and only 2 points behind Graham Norton and 3 behind Paul Merton. So Helen Boaden, the head of Radio 4, is in our audience, supporting us magnificently and doing a wonderful job keeping the standard of Radio 4 up to the standard and winning listeners all the time.
Just keep going, Nicholas.
Yes, well, there we are. Helen, have you got a subject you'd like to give to Paul Merton?
Yes, Paul, I'd like to know why just a minute has lasted so long.
Paul, can you tell her why Just a Minute has lasted so long, in 60 seconds if possible, starting now?
Lack of proper entertainment in the rest of the country, one might feel. When you're speaking on Just a Minute and you're given a subject, it may be hot air balloons, Venetian blinds, you start with confidence thinking I'm probably not going to get as far as a minute, but if I start elongated...
Graham challenged.
No, bad thing.
What's that?
I know, I thought he said start or something
He did
twice.
say start.
Oh, he said start twice then?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, you did.
Yes, right. Yes, right.
Yeah.
Graham, come on.
You can see Graham's inner child all the time, can't
It's this shirt.
you? It was a girl, was it?
I do think the nice positive way is that your inner child is closer to the surface of your personality than most of us, Graham, and that's one of the reasons they love you so much.
Absolutely.
I feel sick again.
So it was meant to be a nice compliment.
No, it was a lovely thing to say.
Right. 44 seconds. You tell us something about why Just a Minute has lasted so long.
The main reason Just a Minute lasts so long is because people keep interrupting. They continually...
Paul.
Hesitation.
Yes, because you interrupted. Right. Why Just a Minute has lasted so long, and 37 seconds available, Paul, starting now.
It's extraordinary, I think, because the actual way of playing it is capable of infinite variety. It's a bit like a game of drafts. It seems very simple, first of all. The rules aren't many, but because of the personalities that play the game, they each bring...
Clement, for a challenge.
Repetition of game.
Yes, you did repeat the word game before. So, Clement, a correct challenge. You tell us something about why you think Just a Minute has lasted so long. 22 seconds starting now.
I think it just seems long.
Sheila has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, it was hesitation, but let's be fair to Clement. He paused for comic effect, and the audience did respond. Yes, I think he did, and I do give out bonus points on occasions. It was a very, very good remark. Clement, give him a bonus point for that. And Sheila, you get a point for a correct challenge, and you have 19 seconds on why Just a Minute has lasted so long, starting now.
Without a doubt, it's because of the participants, excluding myself, of course, Kenny and Derek and Peter Jones, and now the younger generation. It's a wonderful game for letting people...
Clement Freud challenge.
She missed me.
Clement, there's no easy way of saying this.
I was coming round to you.
I think I have to give you the benefit of the doubt, Sheila, and say you have another 7 seconds why Just a Minute has lasted so long, starting now.
And, of course, the wise and witty Clement Freud and the fair and judgmental Nick Parsons. What would we have done?
So it's now very, very close and even, as it should be in this special anniversary show. Sheila Hancock has moved forward. She's now equal in third place with Clement Freud. Only 1 point behind Graham Norton, and he's only 1 point behind Paul Merton. Oh, it's tension time, isn't it? They're not very tense, the audience. Steve Frost, who's played the game with some acclaim in the past, is in our audience. And Steve, would you like to think of a subject, or maybe you've thought of one, and give it to Sheila Hancock?
Good evening, Sheila. Good evening. I'm a bit confused, Sheila. I came to see No Sex Please, We're British tonight. Well, I'm waiting for Ronnie Corbett to come on. Anyway, my subject is, what's wrong with a hairy chest?
All right, Sheila, can you talk about what's wrong with a hairy chest? 60 seconds, Sheila, starting now.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, nothing's wrong with a hairy chest, but I do prefer one that isn't, like Graham's that's showing through his little lacy jumper.
Can I just say, and now I'm so pleased this has come up. You see, shirt not see-through because chest is hairy.
Is it?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, but they're little blondie hairs.
I should explain to our listeners that at that particular point, and why the audience laughed, was because Graham bared his chest to Sheila, who had a very, very close look. And what was the reaction, Sheila?
Well, it's sort of palely hairy.
I think,
Hairy
in
nonetheless.
other words, Sheila, you would not describe it as a truly hairy chest.
No, I wouldn't.
Right, then you've got the subject still.
Excuse me, I've placed personal ads. It's hairy.
It may have hairs, but it's not hairy.
It's hairy.
All right. right, you can have the subject. I want to hear Graham on
All right.
hairy chest.
She's been very generous. She's let you have it, and you get the point now instead of Sheila. 53 seconds. You tell us something about what's wrong with a hairy chest, starting now.
What's wrong with a hairy chest is that the hair is never content there. It seems determined to get to shoulders and back. There it lurks, growing up, and you have to cut it like some sort of chopery. I've got a hen and chickens on one shoulder. Oh, maybe I've said shoulder again. Oh, I don't know.
Paul.
Repetition of shoulder.
You did say so. Paul, you're going to tell us something about what's wrong with a hairy chest. 37 seconds, starting now.
Well, you have to be careful, Steve, for hairy chest because of friction. If you've got a rubber sheet and the alarm clock goes off when you get up quickly, you're liable to set your pillows on fire. And I can tell this happened to you, isn't it? You told me about it. I remember up in Edinburgh 1 year he told me about that, and it was extraordinary.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition have told me about
You told me about that.
It's a public health warning. People should know.
Clement, another point to you, 23 seconds. What's wrong with a hairy chest, starting now?
I don't believe anything is wrong with a hairy chest. I have a hairy chest. My mother had.
Sheila, you challenge.
No, we've got to draw the line somewhere.
That was deviation, yes. I don't believe what he said about his mother there. And 16 seconds. Getting what's wrong with a hairy chest, starting now.
There is nothing wrong with a hairy chest because it isn't a sign
Clement
of
Freud
virility.
challenge.
Deviation.
I think I said nothing again.
I knew you did, but don't say it, otherwise they'll get you
well,
for it.
I'd
For goodness
like
sake,
to
yes. Graham challenge.
Did you say nothing
Yes.
again?
No. That's a retrospective challenge. I thought he was going to have you for that, but he didn't. So he interrupted you, so you get a point for being interrupted. You keep the subject. What's wrong with a hairy chest, starting now?
Some people say it's a sign of virility, but I'm here to tell you from my own experience that is absolutely not true.
Right. What's the score at the end of that round? Well, Sheila Hancock, who was training a little while ago, she has now leapt forward, getting one for the whistle going as well. She's now in the lead. It's still very close, though. She's 1 ahead of Paul Merton, 2 ahead of Graham Norton, and 3 ahead of Clement Freud. And it's Graham Norton's turn, and here's a very good subject. Oh, gosh, it isn't so good. Confusing the chairman. Graham, can you talk on confusing the chairman for 60 seconds, starting now?
Confusing the chairman in this game is not exactly a great challenge. No, the trick is to notice if you've done it. I don't know. Possibly he's confused right now. Look at him. Are his eyes glazing over? Oh, is that a word? I'm not sure. His hair's not moving. The jacket remains burgundy. The tie. Oh, my God. Where did you get that? In 2050, it'll be back in fashion. I think sometimes he's not confused. He's other things, like asleep.
Sheila challenge.
He's actually said confused twice.
Yes. And he's deviating. I'm never asleep.
Just napping.
So, Sheila, yes, here's a correct challenge. You have 28 seconds, confusing the chairman, starting now.
Well, as we get older, it's much more difficult to be a chairman, and I feel rather sorry for Nick having to cope with this complicated game at his grand old age. Inevitably, he's going to get a bit befuddled with the rules. And often he asks the audience, which is the most irritating thing that he does when he's confused. Let's ask the people out front, and they all...
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of ask.
Ask the people,
Yeah.
yes. I'd have given against you anyway.
I was so clever changing
I've
the
never
audience
spoken
to
to the audience except to encourage them and say this. Right. I wish this subject hadn't come up, really. Confusing the chairman, Paul, with you 5 seconds ago, starting now.
It's not a difficult task. Simple colour and movement usually does it. Come towards him quickly with a very striped shirt. You don't know where he is.
So Paul Merton was speaking with the whistle went and got that extra point, and he's now gone 1 ahead of the others. And Chris Neill is in our audience. Chris, who used to produce our show and is now doing stand-up comedy and has also appeared in Just a Minute with great style. Give a subject for Sheila Hancock, would you,
I certainly will. Thank you very much. I hope I haven't, in case anybody on the panel actually speaks about it, I hope I'm not casting aspersions. But I'm assuming anyone on the panel is actually over, and probably including you, Nick, as well, is over the age of 35. And I'm just, yeah. And I'm very pleased to report that I'm not. And so my subject is what I was like at 35.
All right, well, that's a good subject. A difficult one, but Sheila, it's your turn to begin. And, well, actually, he set it for you. 60 seconds starting now.
Well, it's so long since I was 35 that I can barely remember it. All I know is I was very confused and I had a 4-year-old child whose bottom I bit on regular... and it was the swinging 60s, so I spent quite a lot of time in miniskirts and Courage boots and Vidal Sassoon hairstyles with a lot of sick down the front from the said infant.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of a lot of.
Yes, there was a lot of, unfortunately. But, Clement, you've got now what I was like at 35, and there are 39 seconds starting now.
When I was at 35 Wimpole Street, I had very heavily moustached upper lip. On the other hand, when...
Paul challenge.
Hesitation.
And there was a hesitation, Paul. You've got 30 seconds, and you tell us something about what I was like at 35, starting now.
Well, it was an extraordinary time being 35. It was only about 7 years ago, but I can remember it as if it was yesterday. Why, I was running through the fields, the corn blowing in my ears, the dandelions over by the corner, and then suddenly... what?
Sheila Hancock challenge.
Oh, I thought you said corn again.
He did,
you
he had
didn't.
too much
you said
corn.
Corn and corner.
Corner, yeah, sorry.
Oh, did you say
Corn and corner, yes, corn and
Yes,
corner.
confused,
The old
yes.
corn and corner routine, corn and corner.
You were going at such a pace, and you're
That's
a distance
right.
away from me. I should explain to our listeners, because
I'm
it's
senile.
different, the ways also... I'm in the centre.
They're clapping in the wings, Nicholas. That's a bad sign.
First
Running
of
a
all,
book that you can't get to the end of the show.
You don't believe a word any of the 4 of them say about me. And secondly, they are two on one side and 2 on the other, and Paul Merton and Graham Norton are furthest away, so it's sometimes difficult to catch exactly what they say, because I haven't got feedback yet. No, you are speaking.
It was corn and corner.
It was corner, corner, I accept that. So
I heard that, and he's even further away from me.
But you bite babies' bottoms, I mean...
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
That's right.
18 seconds are available, Paul, for what I was like at 35, starting now.
I don't think I was radically different at 35 to what I am now. Perhaps a bit more and maybe some less. There is an old...
Clement Freud challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree with the hesitation.
Dramatic pause, I'm afraid.
Dramatic pause to work out the rubbish you just said. Isn't it interesting?
It may be rubbish to you, it's a career to me.
If they have a joke at my expense, you applaud. If I make one at their expense, you say, ooh. Right, 8 seconds with you, Clement. What I was like at 35, starting now.
When I was at 35 Old Kent Road, it was much more fun than when I was at 35.
Paul challenge.
When I was?
Yeah, when I was?
Yeah, repetition.
Well done, Paul. Well listened. 2 seconds on what I was like at 35, starting now.
I think if I ask you to picture a golden...
In our audience, we have the lovely Pam Ayres, who is shortly going to be in one of our shows, I'm delighted to say. And she's come here today, and she's got a subject which we would like you to give to Paul Merton. Pam, what would you like to ask Paul Merton to talk on?
Oh, well, I feel very nervous, actually, as you can probably tell from my tremulous voice, because having been asked to appear on the programme and having now seen the cutthroat and murderous nature...
I'll protect you, Pam, don't worry.
Will you?
Yeah.
Well, in that...
Run, don't walk, Pam.
He'll protect you, but remember he's clinging to life.
It may only be protection in the short term, then. But in view of my fears and apprehension, I would like to ask you, Paul, how to win points, even by underhand means, on Just a Minute.
Pam, can we condense that to how to win points in just a minute and cut out the underhand means?
All right,
you
then.
like that as well, dear?
Well, I wouldn't mind a bit of underhand going on. Yes, of course.
You want the underhand means in as well. All right, then, Paul, the subject is, from Pam Ayres, how to win points, even in underhand means, in just a minute. and you have 60 seconds starting now.
Well, there's all kinds of intimidation you can play. You can suddenly stare at Clement, or perhaps he might stare at you, or
Clement challenge.
He put me off. I was intimidated, Nicholas.
Yes. And I should say to our listeners, sometimes that does happen. They do stare at each other.
It's underhand, in my view.
It was definitely. And Clement, you've got in with a correct challenge. I didn't hear what it was, but
repetition.
Repetition.
You didn't hear what it was?
A stare.
Oh, I see.
I like to hear it from the person who challenges, because sometimes they give a different challenge, which is not one I'd agree with. This is me being utterly unconfused. Thank you.
It makes a change.
There's no holding you back, is there, Paul? Right.
No.
52 seconds, Clement, on how to win points, even by underhand means, in just a minute. 52 seconds available, starting now.
Quite a good way of doing it is change your name to Paul Merton. You will become enormously successful. And the great thing about this comedian, stand-up comic, who is sitting on my right, is that he has a hairy chest, which means when sending shirts to the laundry, there's an extra charge for extricating the hirsute.
I'm sure our listeners' imagination went with that one, because Paul, by intimidating Clement, by undoing his shirt and showing his hairy chest, which the audience absolutely adored. I know it's the chest, or the fact that Clement so assiduously kept going in spite of that. And Paul, you challenged at one point.
Hesitation, I'm afraid.
I know there was, yes.
I was willing him all the way.
And you were. And you did win a point by underhand means. But as that's the subject, I've got to give it to you. 22 seconds. How to win points, even by underhand means, in just a minute, starting now.
Another way is to use a word like corner and then a moment later say corners. And that is the singular and the plural of the same combination of letters. And the careful listener will discern the difference, but sometimes another member of the team, perhaps somebody at the furthest end of Piccadilly, because it's quite a large stage we're on here, will say, I didn't quite catch that, but perhaps it was in...
So, at the end of that round, Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went, getting the extra point, and he's gone forward. He's in the lead, but he's only 4 points ahead of Clement Freud. And I realise, from looking at the clock, that we're moving into the last round, so I'm not utterly confused. I think it deserves a bigger... right. Graham Norton is in third place, only 1 point behind, and only 1 point behind him is Sheila Hancock. It's still very close as we move into the final round, and in our audience we have the supremely humorous Ross Noble. And Ross, we'd like you to give us something to Graham Norton.
Oh, right,
Yes.
OK. It's a bit weird sitting in the front like this, isn't it?
I know.
I feel like I'm driving the biggest cab in the world. There's one topic which we haven't really heard about, which we should really cover, I think. Could you tell us 10 things we didn't know about Nicholas Parsons?
And Ross, I thought you were my friend.
That's why I only had 10 things.
Right, Graham, that's the subject, and I've got to go with it because he's thrown it at you. 10 things you never knew about Nicholas Parsons. And there are 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Nicola Parsons was born 90 years ago. A quiet girl, she didn't bother the other kids too much in school. Later in life, she moved to Spain and became a cabaret artiste. That's what they call them in Spain.
Sheila, your challenge.
Well, it was a bit of a hesitation.
A complete hesitation.
Don't worry, I won't have
Yes.
10 things about Nicholas, so you can get it back.
Right. 10 things you never knew about Nicholas Parsons, Sheila, and there are 47 seconds available if you want it, starting now.
Well, I think everybody knows everything about Nicholas. I mean, there he is. He's got grey hair and he wears a blazer and a smart tie and he chairs just a minute and he appears in rude shows occasionally and he's married and...
Paul, your challenge.
A lot of he's.
A lot of
yes.
he's, I'm afraid.
Good.
Paul, you got in on a number of he's. There are 33 seconds. 10 things you never knew about Nicholas Parsons, starting now.
Apparently, he used to be in show business. You look at it now and think, surely that's not believable. But yes, if you go back to the midst of time, Tommy Handley, it's that man again. Nicholas was the man. Oh, no.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition.
21 seconds. 10 things you never knew about Nicholas Parsons, starting now.
10 things would be blind, paralytic, insensible, wears a wig, puts his teeth into a bucket by his bed.
Sheila, you've challenged. Well, I actually challenge you then, Clement.
Ask the audience.
Yeah. Where do you think he puts his teeth?
They are stuck in my head and have been since a child. Sheila, you challenged them.
Well, you made me.
Don't you think he was deviating?
No, I don't think he was
Oh,
deviating.
my God! You don't think so, Clement? They don't think you were deviating. I've never heard such devious rubbish in my life. But Sheila doesn't want to accept it, so you take the subject still. You get a point for that, and you have 6 seconds starting now.
Is 90, though he looks younger, but his son lent me his bus pass, so I know.
So, as I said before, this was to be the last round, and I'm afraid that is the end of this particular anniversary show of Just a Minute. Let me give you the final score, because a lot of people are very interested in it, because the contribution from all of them was absolutely magnificent. And we had two equal in third place, which was Graham Norton and Sheila Hancock. They came third in a very strong, very powerful third position. And in a very strong position was Clement Freud in second place, but only 2 points ahead of him was Paul Merton, which says, Paul, you are the winner of our anniversary show. As we have no more time, we've been running 35 years. I would like, in conclusion, to give a few very personal thank yous. I'd like to thank some of the people who are no longer with us, but have helped to make Just a Minute such a fun and exciting show. Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones, and Kenneth Williams. And, of course, the wonderful Ian Messiter, who devised the programme. I'd also like to thank tonight's guest setters, in alphabetical order: Pam Ayres, Helen Boaden, Gyles Brandreth, Charles Collingwood, Jenny Eclair, Steve Frost, Malcolm Messiter, Chris Neill, and Ross Noble. And finally, and our thanks to our magnificent, our wonderful team, this is Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Sheila Hancock, and Clement Freud. A special round of applause for them, please. I also want to thank the lovely broadcast assistant, Claire Bartlett, who's helped me keep the score and blown her whistle with such style. We also thank our producer-director, who gives us such encouragement, that is Claire Jones. And we are very grateful to this lovely audience and the fans who followed our show religiously for 35 years. Right, there. Please continue to do so, and see you back when we have our next anniversary. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from the panel, and from everybody else, goodbye. Tune in when we next play Just a Minute.
And on the Radio 4 website, you can delve deeper into the history of Just a Minute, which will be back on Monday evening at 6:30. Now, is it such a happy New Year's Day so far as the weather's concerned?
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you, hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 talented and experienced players of the game. We're delighted to welcome back that master of improvised comedy and repartee, Paul Merton, that mistress of humour and comedy, Linda Smith, and that wonderful stand-up ad hoc comedian, Ross Noble, and that literate and clever humorist, Clement Freud. And would you please welcome all 4 of them? And as usual, I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, on a subject that I will give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. Beside me sits Lottie Barker, who's going to help me keep the score and blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Marlow Theatre in that beautiful cathedral city of Canterbury. And we have in front of us a keen Kentish audience ready to cheer us on our way as we start the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, the subject I have in front of me is how to hand in your resignation. Please tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
Well, you should do it with style, with elan, a sense of purpose. I remember when I was working with the civil service some 20 years ago, I had this dream of one day going into work dressed as a clown, walking into the manager's office and pulling a wheelbarrow full of burning documents and saying, "Ah, look what happened," and seeing what his reaction would be, because I think it's no good just sort of sending a letter and saying, "Oh, I've had enough." You ought to be able to go in there and say, "Listen, I don't like the way you run this company." Who's this boss?
Ross has challenged.
It's a repetition of go in.
It was a repetition, so Ross, that's a correct challenge, and you get a point for that, of course, and you take over the subject of how to hand in your resignation, and there are 37 seconds available, starting now.
One good way to do it is to write it on your buttocks and then back into the glass window of your boss's office. Another good way, I've repeated myself and nobody even knows. Oh yeah, I forget, are you allowed to challenge yourself? Is that in the rules?
Well, you'll see what happens.
I was just sort of thinking about buttocks and I kind of drifted off a bit.
But Linda managed to challenge first, yes.
Well, repetition?
Yes, but what of?
Some words that he was saying.
Yes, that's right, yes.
That he really shouldn't have repeated within that 1 minute.
You know, I think to be fair within the rules of Just a Minute, I say, Ross, you didn't give me an accurate challenge, so you have an incorrect challenge. You keep the subject, you get a point for that, and you continue with 30 seconds available on how to hand in your resignation, starting now.
You could go to the garden outside of the office and you could plant some daffodils.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of you could.
Yes, you could before.
We've had 3 you could.
Yes. I don't know why you sort of have that reaction. It's a perfectly legitimate challenge. It's a correct one. And Clement, you have a point for a correct challenge. You have the subject. 26 seconds available, starting now.
You hand in your resignation with fury, anger, and preferably an oath. Damn you, you swine. Dirty, rotten.
Linda challenged.
Repetition of you.
I don't think that challenge has won you many friends in this audience, Linda, but it is a correct challenge.
I don't know. First of all, I'm not being specific enough. Now I'm being too specific. I mean...
It's a correct challenge, Linda.
Okay.
So no, you have a point. You're keen, that's what we encourage. And you have 16 seconds, and you have how to hand in your resignation, starting now.
I have very little experience of how to hand in your resignation because in my very brief sojourn into the working world, my pioneering work...
Clement challenge.
Repetition of my.
Hoisted on your own petard, but
well,
yes.
Canterbury, we're in for a long evening.
There we are, yes. Yes, we're trying not to be too keen on some of the smaller words. But Clement, you got back at her quite correctly. You have a point for that, and you have the subject back, and you have 8 seconds, starting now.
I think you do it graciously.
Ross challenge.
Repetition of I.
He did not...
Right, I'll allow it in this round only, but from now on, let's resist that temptation. But he did say I before. And so, Ross, you got a correct challenge. You got a point. You got 6 seconds. How to hand in your resignation, starting now.
Shave it into the side of a dog and then throw some chum at your boss and then...
Paul challenge.
Repetition of boss.
Yeah, you mentioned your boss before, yes. Right. Well, listen, Paul. 3 seconds for you on the subject, starting now.
A man once wrote to the Sunday Times, "I've just got rid of an employee by the most remarkable way. What I..."
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Paul Merton. He's got 1 point, so has Linda Smith. Clement's got 2, and Ross Noble's got 3. So, in fact, there's a lot of points scored in the first round, which is unusual. But we continue. And Linda, would you take the next round? And the subject is fillings. Tell us something about fillings in this game, starting now.
Fillings? Well, all sorts of things in this world have fillings. Biscuits, for example. Jammy Dodgers have a filling that seems to be some kind of sticky red conserve. I can only...
Paul Merton challenge.
It's jam.
Jam can also be called a conserve. Isn't it?
I was conserving the word jam for a later moment.
Ah.
Yeah. But I don't think it was... I mean, I know the audience...
I thought Linda was confused as to what it was.
No, she was. No. I think, you know...
No, that's Nicholas. He's confused as to where we are.
I don't think so. Paul, a keen challenge, but it was incorrect, so Linda, another point to you. You keep the subject. 51 seconds still available on fillings starting now.
I think it must be some kind of sports jam, because it seems to be about 30% lycra.
Paul challenge.
No, it's just jam. just jam.
Well, I beg to differ. I think it's much stretchier than your normal jam.
No.
I don't think normal jam has the give that Jammy Dodger jam.
I think you'll find it's jam that's just been sitting on the shelf for a long time. The stretchability that you see is attributed to the longevity of the jam.
I think, Paul, you have a lot to learn about jam technology.
Do you know that jam is also an acronym for just a minute? Thank you.
Deviation from the subject of jam.
Listen, you're not even talking in the subject at the moment. You've been having a cooking talk and so forth. Paul, the audience enjoyed your interruption, but it wasn't a correct challenge. We give you a bonus point because of the response you received. Linda, you still have the subject. You got a point because you were interrupted. 47 seconds available for fillings starting now.
Teeth sometimes have fillings. Amalgam, usually. I think that's probably the most practical thing to have in your teeth, rather than...
Clement Freud challenge.
2 teeth.
Yes. You did
well,
repeat
some of us have got our own.
Ooh. Clement, you have the subject of fillings. There are 41 seconds available, starting now.
When they give you a questionnaire which has lots of boxes along the sides of the pages, you say, what are these for? And they answer, fillings. That's all I have to say.
Paul, you challenged.
A conclusive end.
A conclusive end.
Hesitation.
Which would be called hesitation. So, Paul, you have the subject now. Fillings, which you wanted anyway, and there are 29 seconds starting now.
There are 17 different types of jam. Let me take you through them. First of all, we have the ordinary household jam.
Clement challenge.
Repetition of jam.
Jam's not the subject.
Jam's not the subject?
No, it's fillings. There was such a discussion about jam, you felt it had taken over from fillings.
Nobody's mentioned fillings. All I've heard is jam.
Jam was the filling.
Now you tell me.
Now, I told you when you started, Paul, but Clement, a correct challenge. 21 seconds still available for fillings starting now.
Stuffings are the most common fillings for chicken, duck, goose, and pork as well. Lamb, veal. You get eggs and breadcrumbs.
Paul challenged.
He's run out of meat, isn't he?
He's going on to the fillings.
Hesitation.
So he hesitated. Yes, Paul, a correct hesitation there. 12 seconds. Tell us something about fillings, Paul. Fillings, starting now.
My favourite filling, without a doubt, and I think you know what it is just by looking at me. I've mentioned it already several times, but this I will not mention by name.
Oh, it's a rough, tough game, isn't it? Yes, Clement, yes.
Repetition mention.
And 4 seconds for you, Clement, on fillings, starting now.
Thyme, coriander, rosemary, parsley, chive.
Paul's challenge.
Well, those aren't fillings, they're herbs.
They are herbs,
They're
but you can
parts
use
of
them as fillings.
Use them as fillings.
You can use them as fillings.
Even parsley?
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Not in my neck of the woods.
And jam.
Well, I mean, maybe your life has not
We
been...
usually use jam where we live. Don't bother with parsley, get the jam in.
Well, you stuff your chicken with jam, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Chicken and jam, you never had it? It tastes horrible.
Right, so Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went. No, he wasn't. He was challenged, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And it was an incorrect challenge.
He didn't mention jam.
No, he was talking about fillings, and you challenged him on the fact that these herbs were not fillings and they can be used as fillings. And Clement, you were challenged with only half a second to go. You got a point for an incorrect challenge. You've got half a second to go. Fillings starting now.
Jam.
So Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point for doing so, and with other points in that round, he's taken a good lead ahead of Paul Merton, followed in equal third place with Linda Smith and Ross Noble. Paul, it's your turn to begin, and the subject now, which is very apt. Strange enough, in all the 35 years we've done this show, we've never thought of this subject. It's 1 minute, because you have to talk for 1 minute. But can you now talk for just a minute on 1 minute, starting now?
1 minute can be fast, slow, medium pace.
Ross, challenge.
No, it's a minute.
I'm talking about the world of perception.
I
If
know
you're drowning underwater, a minute's quite a long time.
That's what you were leading to say, I'm sure. But what you actually said was 1 minute can be slow or fast. It can't. 1 minute, Ross is right. It's deviation. 1 minute is 60 seconds. It's counted down per second, according to the whatever.
Were you confused by what I said?
No. I understood exactly where you were going. You were going into one of your surreal areas, but you didn't preface that. You just said 1 minute.
Should I make a special noise?
I'm
going into a surreal area. I'll be a hooter.
Beep, beep.
I think
it was you just covering up the fact you've got access to time travel.
Well, there's quite a few people out there think, oh, well, he might have. Sort of bloke he would.
Cracked it. Do you think he'd be here tonight?
I think, Ross, you got in very rapidly. I think it would be very unfair not to give it to you for deviation. Thanks. So you have 57 seconds on 1 minute starting now.
I deviated. 3 seconds I was talking for.
Your opening remark was utterly devious. So I think Ross was entitled to have it. I know. Listen, this is just a minute. These are the rules. Who's running it, you or me? I mean, it's very difficult sometimes to interpret, but I try to be fair within the rules of just a minute. And if I think I've been a little generous to one, I always rebalance it out by readjusting the situation a little later on. And don't confuse me, audience, please. Ross, 57 seconds on 1 minute, please. So 1 minute, please. That's what this show used to be called. On 1 minute, starting now.
I recently bought an album called The Best of Westlife, which was exactly 1 minute long. It must have taken them quite a lot of time to actually find that particular piece of music that was...
Paul, challenge.
Well, I think if it's that long, it's not really an album, it's more of a single.
Well, actually, it's not really a single, is it? It's a sample.
Yes. So it's certainly not an album,
I will show you how fair I am. I try to have the wisdom of Solomon, which is very difficult in here. I was generous to you on that other challenge. I will now be generous to Paul and say, yes, that was a good challenge, Paul, and you had the subject back of 1 minute, 46 seconds, starting now.
In the future, some 400 years...
I knew it!
Yeah.
Ross.
Time travel!
Well interjected, Ross. We give you a bonus point because we loved what you said, and the audience did as well, so he gets a bonus for that. But Paul was interrupted, so he gets a point, and he keeps the subject 43 seconds, 1 minute, starting now.
1 minute will be much longer than they are...
Ross, challenge.
We've already established it's 1 minute.
In 400 years' time.
Yes, but how do you know that?
Because I'm a time traveller. Oh.
Yes, well, Ross, I knew we'd get it out of him eventually.
I don't know how I adjudicate on this one.
Nicholas, am I a time traveller or not? It's as simple as that.
No, you're not a time traveller, so Ross has it.
Yeah.
41 seconds. The subject is 1 minute, starting now.
Packet noodles take exactly 1 minute to cook. If you really want them to be nice, you can add oregano, basil. You can also add some cheese. You can add some meat. Why not get some dog food and mix that in? Possibly get some more little...
Linda, you challenge.
Very slight hesitation.
Yes, there was. You start listing and you soon trip yourself up, don't you?
I don't know enough foods.
Right.
I only know noodles, that's all I eat.
You're a noodle king, are you?
Very much.
Right,
so.
Right. 25 seconds. Linda, you have a correct challenge, of course, and the point for that. And the subject is 1 minute, starting now.
1 minute. Salesmen often say, may I have 1 minute of your time, when what they really mean is, may I have all your money for some poxy timeshare, which, of course...
Clement, challenge.
Repetition.
Of what?
May I and time and...
May I have, if you repeat that. Clement, you have the subject. It's 16 seconds for you to talk on 1 minute, starting now.
I think it's now been established that 1 minute cannot be slow or fast, but is medium-paced 60 seconds. This game used to be called 1 Minute Please before it became just a minute. And I am old enough to remember the very beginning when Ian Messiter...
Clement Freud speaking as the whistle when gained an extra point. He's now 1 ahead of Ross Noble. He's 3 behind Paul Merton, and he's a few ahead of Linda Smith. I only give you that order so as not to confuse you, but I probably have. Linda, it's your turn to begin, and the subject here is osteopathy. Do you know much about it? If not, whether you do or not, you still have to try and talk on the subject, and 60 seconds are available starting now.
Osteopathy is practiced by osteopaths, who are very clever people who can tell where you've hurt yourself just by when you scream, "Oh, blimey, that really hurts, stop doing that, I'll give you 50 quid, I won't even stay an hour." It's quite amazing how it works. Some people might think that the word osteopathy means some mad person who hates oast houses, which would make...
Ross, challenge.
Was it repetition of person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, he is right.
39 seconds, osteopathy with you, Ross, starting now.
Osteopathy is the word used to describe general ambivalence towards ostriches. Obviously, Bernie Clifton used to suffer from this on a regular basis. He would be riding around on that particular beast and he would have to bring in special people that could do the job that was needed to be done. And I haven't paused. Don't go thinking I paused there, because I didn't pause. Don't even... I did repeat.
Challenge.
Repetition of pause.
Yes, don't think I can pause there. I paused there. So, Linda, you got in first, and you've got osteopathy back. You've got 17 seconds, and you start now.
Osteopathy back? Well, that's quite funny in itself, isn't it? If you had an osteopathy and it was to do with...
Paul, challenge.
Did we have repetition of back?
No, she never mentioned the back before. She mentioned the muscles and the things, and you see ow and
osteopathy
groan
back,
and so
and then
forth.
do we not?
No, I said you got osteopathy. I said back.
Did you?
I got osteopathy back, and you
travelled
said...
forward in time, and I was about to do that.
So, sorry, but...
Sorry about that.
Well, I love the keenness, Paul. Don't be inhibited. And not that you ever could be as someone of your nature. 11 seconds, Linda. You have an incorrect challenger point and osteopathy starting now.
Osteopathy...
And who challenged Clement?
Me.
What?
I wanted you to love the keenness.
You know you're keen, Clement. You wouldn't be coming back so regularly after 35 years if you weren't.
You said back before.
Also, we established earlier that all minutes are the same. This is a pretty long minute, can I just say that?
Clement, were you looking for a bonus point then?
Yes.
Right, you got one. Because they enjoyed the interruption. Linda, you get a point for being interrupted, and you have 11 seconds on osteopathy starting now.
Osteopathy could mean someone who couldn't be bothered to go to Austria, in which case I would suggest they chose another...
Paul, challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Well, it doesn't mean that. But I mean, it could mean that. You could say this table could be a horse. If it is, the glass will fall off. But it's not.
You could say it.
You could say that, and
but how do you define deviation then? If you say, well, it could be that.
She said it could mean that in some people's minds. So I think she stated her case very adequately.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Sounds like a new rule to me.
No, it's an interpretation of the rules that exist, as far as I can see. It's just a tough job. They do give me a tough time, don't they?
They won't like this in the year 2068, I tell you.
Osteopathy with you, Linda, having got another point. 5 seconds available starting now.
Osteopathy can be found if you look in the...
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of can be.
Yes.
But I was saying Canby Island.
Could be.
Canby Island.
You did say could be before.
Clement, thank God someone's listening.
So have another point. You have 3 seconds. Osteopathy starting now.
Osteopathy has come in for a lot of misinformation this afternoon, and I think it's a really poor...
So, Linda Smith, to the joy and pleasure of our audience here, started with the subject and, in spite of interruptions, finished with it. And she not only got a point for speaking when the whistle went, but she gained a number of points in the round, and she really has leapt forward. She's only 1 point behind our joint second place, Ross Noble and Clement Freud, and then only a couple of points behind our leader, Paul Merton. It's anybody's contest, but you're not interested in that, are you? You love the fun and the banter. Oh, my God, I'm dressing. Ross, it's your turn to begin. Oh, what a lovely subject for this lovely part of the world in Kent. Hops. Ross, tell us something about hops in just a minute, starting now.
Hops could be the name of a little rabbit that a tiny child has found in a nearby field all on its own, and she's gone over and picked it up and put it in a special case and taken it back to her home, where she will care for that said beast. It's not really, strictly speaking, an angry creature, and I used the word that I used before.
Clement.
Repetition of used.
Yes, use the word and use and also word. Right, fair dues, right. 42 seconds, Clement, a correct challenge. Hops, starting now.
Christopher Robin went hoppity, repeat 4 times, hop. When I asked him to stop, he said I couldn't possibly. Hops also grow in Kent and are an integral part of beer. You get the hops and you warm them until they are brown and lovely and smell toasty.
Oh, that audience were actually willing you forward, but you slipped up. Ross, you were the first to challenge.
Yes.
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 Well, you have to say
hesitation.
That's right,
yes.
Hesitation, correct.
Yes.
You
Sorry, he'd actually hypnotised me.
Well, he had the audience actually.
I was
yes.
like that.
And the audience were much the same, mesmerised actually. The 22 seconds, hops with you, Ross, starting now.
Hops were the type of dances that teenagers in America used to go to and enjoy fantastic rhythm and blues and possibly rock and roll. The Fonz was often seen at these particular events. Hops could be a type of car released by the Ford Motor Company. The new Hops that would be seen leaping over fences and trees instead of going on a road like it.
So Ross Noble kept going to the whistle went, gained that extra point, and a wonderful round of applause. Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is how to do first aid. Can you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
It is a close-run thing between giving mouth-to-gob resuscitation and shouting, "Is there a doctor in the house?" Now, I'm never quite sure which comes first. First aid, I suppose, means having a black bag full of stethoscopes and sticking plaster, also ointments and unctions, which you put on the affected parts of the body when someone...
Paul, challenge.
Well, it's deviation, really,
Why?
I think. Well, you said a bag full of stethoscopes. And I think you'd only have one stethoscope, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You wouldn't really want other stethoscopes for people to join in.
No, well...
Oh, Clement says you would have more than one, in case you had a stethoscope failure.
But I mean, listen, it's difficult to judge because there could be an individual who has 2 stethoscopes.
Yes, of course.
He could. He might have a
backup system.
Yes, he might have an old...
Stethoscope suddenly caught fire.
Yes,
the spare stethoscope is here.
That's right.
I can't hear anything. The stethoscope's blocked with some sort of animal.
That's
I've got
right.
a spare. First aid continues.
Yes. So why did
Always pack a spare stethoscope.
So why did you challenge Paul?
Well, he said stethoscopes. I said that's deviation.
No, listen, I'll tell you what we do. We'll give you a bonus point because we love the way you try to cover.
I'd like him to have the subject.
Well, I don't want it. I'm not interested in the subject. I just want people at home to realise if they're in an accident, don't expect somebody with 2 stethoscopes. It won't happen.
Right. But, Clement, you were interrupted, so you get a point for that. And you do keep the subject, how to do first aid, starting now.
I don't really know myself how to do first.
Paul Chance.
Oh, that's blindingly obvious. Can we buzz for honesty and candour?
You can, but it's not one of the rules of just a minute. And after all...
So it is 2 stethoscopes things just annoying me.
No, you can't have him for that, as much as you'd like to. I mean, the thing is that in just a minute you have to keep talking the subject even if you don't like it or don't know anything about it. And Clement's endeavouring to do that very successfully at the moment. And he has 33 seconds on how to do first aid, starting now.
There's a man who lives in my village, near the church, down a lane, behind the lake, who actually knows exactly how to do first aid. Ask him, what shall I give?
Linda, challenge.
Repetition of knows?
Knows, yes. There's a man down a lane who knows, and he knows something else. And you have 20 seconds on how to do first aid, starting now.
I don't know how to do first aid. I wonder if...
Ross, challenge.
Well, that's deviation then, isn't it? That's the...
Well, that's exactly what Paul tried to get Clement on, and I didn't give it to him.
Oh, well,
so
it's
I can't give it to...
second time,
I can't give it to him. Linda, an incorrect challenge. So you keep the subject, how to do first aid, 18 seconds available, starting now.
I know how to do first aid.
Ross, challenge.
A minute ago, she didn't know how to do first aid.
Right.
Isn't education a fantastic thing?
No. So the benefit
I've
of the
just done
doubt
a
on this
course.
occasion to you, Ross. And 16 seconds available. How to do first aid, starting now.
You could join St John's Ambulance. He was, of course, the patron saint of people with little bags that sit around looking bored at village fetes. Another...
Clement, challenge.
Repetition of saints.
It was, yes.
Yes, it was
Yes.
indeed, I'm afraid, yes. So, Clement, you've got him in 7 seconds on how to do first aid, starting now.
A tourniquet is particularly important for doing first aid. You can use a belt or tie.
Ross, challenge.
Not if you've just got a graze.
Yes, he didn't establish in what kind of injury there was involved.
You poked yourself in the eye and somebody's trying to get your leg off.
I think, to be generous in this situation, I give it to you, Ross. 2 seconds on how to do first aid, starting now.
It's best to do it on a sick person, because otherwise they get very angry and they start...
So Ross Noble was then speaking as the whistle went. They all gave such good value, I don't like to say that one was ahead of the other. In fact, there wasn't much aheadness in this at all, because Linda Smith and Paul Merton were equal in second place, and they were only 2 points behind Ross Noble and Clement Freud, who were equal in first place. So we say, Ross and Clement, you're the winners this week. With a round of applause for you all. So, it only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 exciting and delightful players of this game, Paul Merton, Ross Noble, Linda Smith and Clement Freud. I also thank Lottie Barker for the way she kept the score for me and blew her whistle so elegantly. And we also thank our producer, Claire Jones, who tries to keep us in order. And we are indebted to Messiter, who created this game. And we're also indebted to this lovely audience here at the Marlow Theatre in Canterbury, who've cheered us on our way with such joy. From them, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the panel, goodbye till we meet again. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, and also to welcome to the show 4 distinctive and talented players of the game, who once more are going to show off their verbal dexterity, their creative ingenuity, and their humorous fantasy as they try and speak for just a minute on the subject that I give them, and they try and do that also without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those 4 talented people are Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Lisa Tarbuck, and Clement Freud. Please welcome all 4 of them. And beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who's going to help me keep the score and blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Radio Theatre in the heart of Broadcasting House. As we start the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject is alternative medicine. And you have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
In olden days, when people were ill, they went to a doctor and either became better or worse. And the medic used to get tremendous applause if he succeeded, and never any blame. Now we have alternative medicine. People who lay their hands on you to heal you, who send you to have injections, to go on diets, jump in lakes, be tattooed.
I wondered when someone was going to challenge. Yes, Lisa, you got in first.
You could have driven a train through that, I'm
Yes.
sure. Alternative or no?
So, hesitation.
Yes.
It's a correct challenge. So, Lisa, you get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject. There are 30 seconds available. Alternative medicine starting now.
Alternative medicine is a wonderful thing. I particularly favour acupuncture. I like my channels to be flowing and free, and I like my chi.
Clement, challenge.
2 likes.
There were 2 likes.
Fair dues.
Yes, fair dues. And you've got the subject back, Clement. 21 seconds available. Alternative medicine starting now.
Osteopathy.
Paul, Merton, challenge.
Now, we've all had a drink. There's no need. There's no need to use language like that. There's nice ladies and gentlemen listening to this show. I mean, it's rude.
What is the challenge when the rules are just a minute?
It's just vulgar language.
Not if you're an osteopath.
Well, I
know,
don't
Paul, it was a surreal challenge, but it wasn't correct within the rules of...
You're being very kind.
Yes. It wasn't correct within the rules of just a minute, so Clement has another point for an incorrect challenge. He keeps alternative medicine. 19 seconds starting now.
Since the eradication of leeches to help your blood disease and similar maladies...
In fairness, that was a hesitation.
It was a hesitation.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
The whole thing.
I don't know. He's struggling a bit on this one. Graham, you have a correct challenge. You have a point, of course. 10 seconds available. Alternative medicine starting now.
The only real alternative to medicine is, of course, certain death. I can't imagine why you'd opt for that, unless you're very boo-hoo sick. Now,
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Graham Norton. So at the end of that round, Graham Norton has 2 points alongside Clement Freud and then Lisa Tarbuck and Paul Merton. Lisa, will you take the next round? The subject is bugs. Tell us something about bugs in just a minute, starting now.
Bed bugs, when magnified, could keep a small child awake for years. I personally saw them when I was about 12 and thought that it was some sort of alien discovery from outer space. Water bugs, on the other hand, can be quite pleasant, drifting around pools, creating little sticky bits around their feet, and generally doing things with silt that we don't need to know, but somebody does. I am actually very anxious about the sort of airborne bugs that one catches that causes you to vomit for hours and hours, if not weeks. Hours and hours.
Yes.
See, I relaxed then, didn't I? I shouldn't
Hours
have
and
done.
hours. Right, Clement, another point to you, and 28 seconds available. You tell us something about bugs starting now.
If you're a nice person, you don't kill bugs. What you do is you catch them and throw them out of a window from a very great height.
Paul Merton challenge.
That would kill them, wouldn't it? It's deviation. So you don't kill them, you throw out them out a window from a very great height. What's the poor bug? The poor bug think, somebody's hand comes down, I'm going to be killed. No, I'm not going to be killed. I'm not going to be killed
some
at all.
bugs
I'm in a lift. Where am I going? I'm going up higher and higher. Oh, this is good. Oh, there's a window. What a lovely view. Ah!
I almost want to give you something for dramatic performance, actually. Yeah. But actually, some bugs can fly. So they might throw them out the window and they fly off, you see.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, what's the point of that?
He's trying to save them. He's environmentally very friendly.
But what were they doing before he picked them up?
I don't know. Ask Clement. I don't think within the rules of just a minute it was...
Altitude sickness.
I don't think it was a fair challenge. So, well tried, Paul. We enjoyed listening to your tirade. But, Clement, you get another point, and you have 18 seconds. Bugs starting now.
You could practice reflexology on bugs.
Lisa challenge. Absolutely, because I don't think you could. I've had it for deviation as well as that. Getting a little tiny fly and trying to get hold of his legs and put your thumbs
Well,
on
on
it.
centipede, I thought.
Oh, yes. Bugs is with you now, Lisa. 15 seconds starting now.
If you suspected your husband of having an affair, or you wanted to obtain some business information that you weren't privy to beforehand, it might be prudent to put a bug into the telephone, or, as we've seen in films, insert one into a lamp, so that you can...
So Lisa Tarbuck was then speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point. And she's now in second place, just behind Clement Freud and just ahead of Graham Norton and Paul Merton. And Graham, your turn to begin. Now, the subject is Victoria and Albert. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Victoria was a very posh woman who became queen. That's why posh people are still called Victoria. I've said posh twice.
Challenge.
Too posh.
There are too many poshes.
And I've never been accused of that before.
Right, so, Paul, you got a point. You've got in with 49 seconds to tell us something about Victoria and Albert, starting now.
When Victoria first met her future husband, Albert Memorial, she was struck by the enormous height of the man. He was an extraordinarily tall fellow, and in Victorian times, which was named after Victoria, she was particularly...
Oh, they enjoyed the expression on the face, and that's why they clapped. But, Graham, you got in first.
Oh, stop. Hesitation.
Right. 31 seconds. You've got Graham... I say Graham and Albert back. It's... you have got Victoria and... You have got Victoria and Albert back with you, Graham, starting now.
Interesting you should say that. Because Victoria Beckham, Victoria Hervey Jones...
Paul Challenge.
That was repetition of Victoria, I was going to say.
No, I did repeat it.
Yes,
no, you heard me right.
Yes, you did repeat it, yes. But you thought he was going to repeat posh, and she said Beckham on this occasion. So, an incorrect challenge, Graham. You've still got Victoria and Albert, and you have 25 seconds starting now.
When you did have to pay for museums, I asked for a refund when I went to the Victoria and Albert one, because they're not in there, in no shape or form. Lots of other mummies, no sign of Vic or Alb. I said, where are they? They didn't know. I searched high and low.
Clement Shams.
They.
Yes, well, a lot of they, I'm afraid, yes. Clement, another point, 10 seconds. Victoria and Albert, starting now.
I think the Victoria and Albert Museum is one of the finest museums.
Paul, challenge.
I can't believe... I can't believe I fell for that.
No.
Museum and museums.
That's right, yes. It's not your day,
It's halfway through museum,
yeah,
and, and at Clement's pace, I had time to think about it. And I really couldn't... I couldn't see an S coming towards me. I could see something that looked like a comma, but it then became an S. So,
Yes.
so my challenge is ridiculous and needless and pointless.
You've explained the workings of your mind, which are very convoluted and very, very enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they weren't correct within the rules of justice.
No.
But they're no use to it, just a minute. So, Clement, another point to you. Victoria and Albert, starting now.
It is interesting and also sad to realise how little Elizabeth and Philip there is.
When Claire so delicately tweaked on her whistle then, it meant the 60 seconds was up. And who was speaking then? It was Clement Freud, who's got a good lead at the end of that round, followed by Graham Norton and Lisa Tarbuck and Paul Merton, once in fourth place. But Paul, your turn to begin. The subject, CCTV. Go on the subject, Paul. 60 seconds starting now.
CCTV was invented several years ago, and there were many Liberty people who thought to themselves, well, I don't know.
Graham Norton challenge.
What's a Liberty people?
Yes.
They're sort of like they're people who believe in liberty.
Oh, fair enough.
Yes, liberty.
No, I was just curious.
But it didn't make sense in the context in which you were using it.
Oh, well, if we've got to make sense, I might as well go home.
I'm sure I will find a chance to redress the balance, Paul. On this occasion, I give the benefit of the doubt to Graham, who has CCTV and 51 seconds starting now.
CCTV is a marvellous invention. For, dear friends, if you did hold up a filling station, how else would you get to remember the lovely occasion? Unless you could bring the video home and watch it over and over again. I said over.
Lisa
twice.
Over. Too many overs, yes.
I need a tissue.
Lisa, 35 seconds. Tell us something about CCTV, starting now.
CCTV could be in...
Right, two lights came on together, so it shows you how fair I am, and they happen to be Graham's and Paul's, so I gave Graham the benefit, and that was yours, Clement, and I'm not going to give anything. Stop it. Benefit of the doubt to Graham last time. Paul, you had the benefit this time. You take the subject, and a point, of course. CCTV, 33 seconds, starting now.
One always looks very guilty when you see this footage back. It's often played on such shows as Crime Watch and the 9 o'clock news, usually when there's been some kind of misdemeanour or felon has been caught in the act. I wonder what we used to do before the days of CCTV. Did street artists hang around various roads, sketching everybody that went past in the hope, or indeed perhaps the mistaken belief that they were about to commit a crime? The Great Train Robbery was initially carried out by people who were no more...
So Paul kept going with a long session on that subject, and he finished up speaking as Wenko gained that extra point for doing so, and he has leapt forward, but he's still trailing the others just a little bit. That's one of those things. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject, an air of authority. Will you tell us something about an air of authority in this game, starting now?
An air of authority, unlike an air of the dog that bit you, is something I've never quite understood, although Prince Charles must be considered an heir of authority. Never has some...
Paul, but challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, it was. He got that groan from the audience and he hesitated. I'm not surprised.
I was riding a groan.
So, Paul, another point to you, and you've got the subject of an air of authority. 45 seconds starting now.
If you want to know the true definition of somebody who has an air of authority, then I would direct you to look no further.
Graham Norton, challenge.
It was a sort of hesitation-y thing.
Yes, it was a hesitation-y thing, so you have it, and you have 37 seconds, an air of authority starting now.
Some teachers in school do not have an air of authority, while others do have an air of authority, or a cane, as it is known. I remember being so frightened of some people who were teaching us in the big building with the books, just there by the hill. Oh, a bike. It'll be very hard to get there, but I'll try. I'm young. I have strength in my legs. And when I arrived,
Yes, it was a sort of...
self-combustion, I felt.
Clement, you challenged first.
Repetition of some.
Yes, there was some. Well done. So you repeated some. Clement, another correct challenge to you. 9 seconds, an air of authority, starting now.
An air of authority is something which is absolutely essential if you set out to become a politician and try...
Lisa, challenge.
Do you know, that was whispery. That was... as he took a breath, I dived in to say hesitation because I knew there's about 2 seconds left. Which makes me wrong.
It makes you wrong, yes. I was wondering whether you're
sorry.
going to have him for deviation on the politician, but I don't think we'll go down that road, because Clement, an incorrect challenge, and you still have an air of authority. Well, you've always had an air of authority, but you have the subject of an air of authority in 2 seconds, starting now.
Friends, Romans, and countrymen.
Right, so at the end of that round, Clement Freud's increased his lead. He's now just ahead of Graham Norton, and then in third place, Lisa Tarbuck and Paul Merton are equal. Lisa, it's your turn to begin. The subject is the public eye. Tell us something about the public eye in this game, starting now.
George Orwell wrote a book once called 1984. I hope the Lord that that's correct. But the public eye, it strikes me, is in the same sort of shadow as that. A great, big, unblinking eye looking down at us all through levels of notoriety, judging each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly not me. I could pop out for some chuck steak and be caught outside the butcher's and have that picture in a magazine. What does it mean? Nothing. Now, you can go off and murder someone and grab yourself a couple of double pages in the Daily Express and find yourself within the public.
Paul, challenge.
Repetition of yourself?
Yes, yourself.
Thank you for that.
Well, did you understand?
No, he's playing the game. That's why we're here.
Yes. Paul, a correct challenge, 23 seconds, the public eye, starting now.
Some people who are in the public eye do complain about it, but of course if you have set out to achieve some fame or notoriety, the last thing you should be doing is moaning about the success you have achieved. I would never think of disguising myself in the public eye. I would wander around proud.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of wood.
Yes, you said wood more than once.
He's bluffing you, Nicholas.
No, he's not. I would not.
You're not
be,
sure, and you're agreeing with him, but you're not sure. How many times did I say would, Nicholas?
You said it twice, which is repetition.
Well, technically that's repetition, yeah.
Clement, only 5 seconds, the public eye starting now.
I have not myself been on the public eye and look forward enormously to being asked.
Lisa, challenge.
He's referring, of course, to the London eye and not the public eye, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I wasn't.
Are you on the public eye?
Can you justify
You're
that,
a rascal, Mr. Freud.
I know. No, you're bluffing this time.
That's sir to you.
A point to you, Lisa. Half a second to go, starting now.
The public eye...
Oh, so Clement Freud's still in the lead, but he's followed in equal second place. Lisa Tarbuck, Graham Norton and Paul Merton all together there. So very interesting. Graham, it's back with you to begin. I think this strikes right home at this particular moment, isn't it? Someone's got down here, learning to drive. Oh, yes. Tell us something about learning to drive, starting now.
I'm so excited because at the moment I am learning to drive. I love it! It is fantastic. I know so many new things now. For instance, I can go...
Lisa, challenge.
You know, I'm being evil now. You've said I quite a lot.
Have I?
Yes, you have,
I supported you through thick and thin. No, come back and bite me.
I owe you my career.
It was a tough challenge because
It was because I wanted to know what he was going to say.
I know, and we all did, and that's why someone thought of that subject for him, so we'd hear about it.
Will now.
Well, you might get back in again. So,
No, you've spotted for everyone.
These are 49 seconds, learning to drive, starting now.
Learning to drive is a very tricky business. Personally, I took myself off to Richmond Park with my friend Imelda, who used to be very, very Oh, it's so
Very,
easy.
very,
Was
yes.
that you?
No.
It was
I'm nice.
You said very, very on purpose, hoping Graham would come in. How a sporting
Yes,
girl you
I
are.
did. You're right.
And Paul, you got in first. 41 seconds. Tell us something about learning to drive, starting now.
I learned to drive at my very first attempt, and in my second and third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, I got addicted to the passing. It was a marvellous achievement when he looks you in the eye and says, well, apart from the 4 people you've knocked over, the elephant that's in tranquilised sedation... Oh, no.
Clement.
Deviation.
Yeah, yes, deviation, right. And, right, learning to drive, Clement, 22 seconds with you, starting now.
Approaching a roundabout, it seems to be important now to switch on the car radio, put your telephone to your ear, smoke, and wave to all those who can see you before you grope the driving instructor. This is essential if you want him to pass you, so that you can get a
Graham
driving...
Norton challenge.
He is sort of hesitating, isn't he? You can't go
He
past...
wasn't sort of.
speaking.
He definitely was hesitating.
Yes.
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 And his pauses got slower and slower.
Because you must make progress at all times. I know that now.
Yes, well, you can make some progress about the information you've learned from learning to drive, but you only 2 seconds in which to do it, and you start now.
70 miles per hour is the speed limit, unless you're...
So Graham Norton was then speaking when the whistle went and gained that extra point, and he's moved into second place behind Clement Freud. Is there anything else you've learned particularly from your learning to drive lessons?
Don't learn to drive near schools. And that's about it, really. No, I have a very nice instructor called Howell. Who's very nice. And I do know now you can't go 70 miles an hour when you're towing a caravan, because it's against the law to go fast in a cardigan. That's true.
And if you were knitting a cardigan, the police stop you, you just say, no, pull over, pull over.
Yeah. Very good. Oh, they're all in a box under the desk.
And, Lisa, your turn to begin. The subject is octopus. Tell us something about octopus in just a minute, starting now.
An octopus is an 8-armed mollusk commonly found...
Graham, challenge.
Hey, to be picky, I'd say legs. Just think.
Now that is opening up quite a debate.
It is opening quite a but I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of it. we go to our expert, Nicholas Parsons, who will tell us what
Well,
they're
if you look up in the dictionary, it does refer to them as legs.
No, it's tentacles.
It was tentacles.
They're not arms or legs, it's tentacles.
They are
But
tentacles.
if one was to hug you, would he be hugging you with his legs or his arms?
In that kind of situation, I wouldn't care one way or the other. As long as he wasn't hugging me tentacles, I'd be all right.
Arms or legs? You
As
decide.
correct.
No, I think, look, for instance, I think the gauge is, if you put gloves on them, they'd look silly, whereas little shoes would look all right.
Give Graham Norton a bonus point for what he just said, because he deserves it. And
No,
to
There's a lot of
It's not
truth in
gloves,
it, Paul.
mittens, surely.
No, well,
There's no fingers.
I'm not going to give you bonus points for
With
mittens.
string all the way round. And then you can turn them upside down, they'd be a salad bowl.
Give mittens to an octopus, you don't want him to lose them.
No, that's right.
And the amount of time he's going to put a mitten on an octopus, you might as well put a bit of string around it.
And then by the time you attack them, they've got all those strings, and then they'll get so caught up, he won't be able to strangle you.
Well, it wasn't my idea in the first place.
But
I'm just trying to make the best of a bad job.
Graham has...
I'd go with slip-ons, I wouldn't go with lace-up shoes. No. That would take forever, the school bus would be long gone.
The idea of an octopus on a school bus is a bit bizarre, but...
Well, it could have 6 legs and 2 arms, otherwise how's it going to have dinner?
We have established with Paul's help that they are tentacles, but some refer to them as legs. You wanted arms. Graham's got a bonus point because of his remarks about the mittens and the shoes and so forth.
I've got a gingham
But you
dress,
have
let's
the
have a show.
And we have a whole routine of going about octopus, but you keep the subject, Lisa, and you have 55 seconds to continue. Octopus starting now.
They have a very well-developed polypy eye that looks like Papa Doc's staring at you from a courtroom in somewhere hot. They feed on crabs and lobsters. I have no idea how they stamp the shells off the lobsters or the crabs, which I have repeated
Graham
on
challenge.
purpose.
Repetition of shellfish, lobsters
Yes,
and crabs.
crabs and yes. So you have 38 seconds on octopus starting now.
The octopuses, or octopi, when shopping for shoes, never go for suede because the salt water plays havoc. And you can never really get the finish back again, even if you use a wire brush. And God knows they can brush away with those little things. Now
Paul
brush.
challenge.
Repetition of brush.
There was a brush.
There was?
You brush away, yes. Paul, do tell us something about octopus in 23 seconds starting now.
Trying to make love to an octopus is one of the most dangerous things that any human being can attempt. I take your mind back now to the days of Jacques Cousteau, who in 1958, very hard it was for him to get across to the general public that you should never approach...
Graham challenge.
Repetition never.
Yes, you mentioned never twice. Graham, 3 seconds on octopus starting now.
Octopus never...
And there we are, Clement.
Repetition of never.
No, he never said never. It was he who said never.
He said never when he said never.
No. Graham has not used the word never yet. Paul used it twice.
Good one.
Yes. So another point to Graham and 1 second on octopus, Graham, starting now.
Octopus do not...
Beautifully done.
Right, so let me give you the situation, the moment as we're moving into the final round, and it is that Paul Merton has just taken the lead. He's 1 ahead of Clement Freud. Graham Norton's leapt forward. He's only 2 points behind our leader, and Lisa Tarbuck's in there with a fight for the last thing. She's only 4 points behind our leader. Graham, it's your turn to begin this last round on cloud 9. Would you talk on the subject starting now?
I feel at a slight loss when discussing on cloud 9, because I don't quite understand it. I know it's got something to do with being happy, but what's wrong? I mean, how bad were 1 to 8? Why wouldn't you settle there? Cloud 9 isn't that good. What's wrong with 10? It's some sort of neighbour envy.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of what's wrong with.
What's wrong with?
Yeah?
Yes.
That's
yes.
my question.
Yes. And you repeated
I'm
it.
glad you picked up on it.
Yes, so you... well, you're not really, because you've lost the subject.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
no.
So, Clement, a correct challenge. You have 41 seconds on cloud 9 starting now.
Cloud 9 is where a successful octopus would end up. All I want to say.
You pause. And you got him first. Hesitation. 36 seconds, Paul, on cloud 9 starting now.
It's a state of happiness, nirvana. You look up to your life and you think, I've never been happier than I am now. Things are bursting full of joy right out of my ears. The endorphins, the chemicals in my brain are floating around my body, giving me a wonderful feeling when I look around at this marvellous...
Graham Norton challenge.
Repetition of look.
Yes. Graham, you've got the subject back. You've got 16 seconds on Cloud 9, starting now.
On Cloud 9, they serve packs of party-size cocktail sausage rolls. Oh, they're lovely. Up to 50 at a sitting. And it's soft pastry, mind. No cutting your gums. Cloud 9 is...
Well, Graham Norton brought this show to a close, and that round to a close, gained an extra point for doing so, and we have an interesting result, because everybody has scored a great number of points. They're all very, very close. Lisa only just finished in 4th place. Only just. A great contribution, but brought in 4th. Because in 2nd place, equal were Graham Norton and Clement. Freud equal. But only 1 point ahead of them was Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, by that small margin, you are the winner this week. So it only remains to say thank you to these 4 delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Graham Norton, Lisa Tarbuck and Clement Freud. I also thank Claire Bartlett for helping me keep the score and for blowing her whistle so elegantly every time the 60 seconds occurred. And also we thank our producer-director, Claire Jones. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game that we all enjoy playing, and we are deeply indebted to our audience who've assembled here in the Radio Theatre to cheer us on our way. We do hope you've enjoyed the show. We've enjoyed playing it to you. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and from the panel, goodbye until the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons. And as the Minute Waltz fades away once more, it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the programme this week 4 individual, highly talented and exciting performers of this particular game. And we have great pleasure in welcoming back somebody who is highly successful at the moment, very popular, outrageously funny, and always enjoyable, and is Graham Norton. We also welcome another comedian who is very good at the improvised humour, and that is Tony Hawks. We welcome back with great pleasure someone who's been with the show since it first began and is ever creative and witty in the show, that is Clement Freud. And we welcome someone who is playing the game now for the very first time, and so she's naturally very anxious about it, but that is the wonderful, original, entertaining performer, Pam Ayres. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? Thank you. Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, and she's going to help me keep the score, and she's going to blow a whistle when the 60 seconds is up. And as usual, I'm going to ask our 4 players of the game to speak on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the beautiful Old Vic Theatre in the heart of that great city of Bristol. And in front of us we have a Bristolian audience, or some Bristolians, and a good Gloucester audience anyway, because they see they all come from outside as well, and they've come here to cheer us on our way as we start the show this week with Graham Norton. And Graham, the subject here is upstaging people. I don't know why you laugh. I've never seen him upstage anybody. He gives all his guests free rein and freedom. But anyway, talk on the subject. 60 seconds, as usual, Graham, starting now.
Upstaging people is something that the people of Bristol are very...
Pam, challenge.
Oh, I think I'm in the wrong, actually,
yes,
straight away, because you can say people, the name of your subject, you can say it as many times as you...
That's right, Pam.
In that case, I'm very, very sorry and deeply apologise.
You don't need to apologise, because it was lovely to hear from you. The audience enjoyed it. And, you got us off to a great start.
Well, I like to be aggressive, you see.
As you haven't played the game before, you can repeat the phrase, the subject, or the words on the card,
Right.
but that's the only thing you can repeat.
All right, thank you very much. I'm a novice, you see.
That's right. But we won't charge anything for that, Graham, and we will carry on and tell you that you have 56 seconds to continue on upstaging people, starting now.
People who upstage people are the luckiest people in the world. And nowhere is that truer than watching the extras in the casualty waiting room. Some doctor desperately emoting about a nurse he might have got pregnant, while a man rolls like a dog in paint, covered in cheap blood behind him. It's all you can watch. Another good way of upstaging people, that would be people you might upstage, is nudity. I'm aware that right now no one's speaking to me. They're all looking up Pam Ayres' skirt. She is truly the Sharon Stone of Bristol. Oh, but now I have said Bristol twice.
Clement challenged.
He said Bristol twice.
Well, though you can't repeat Bristol too often, you can in this game. So, Clement, that was a repetition, so you get a point for a correct challenge. You take over the subject, and there are 8 seconds available, starting now.
Upstaging people is much more rewarding than upstaging ants, bees, cats, ducks, elephants.
Whoever is speaking in this game when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion was Clement Freud, so naturally he has 2 at the end of the round, and nobody else has got any at all. Tony Hawks, will you take the next round, please? Tony, the subject is office politics. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
One of the advantages of being in show business is that you don't need to go into an office every day of the week and try and indulge in office politics. Therefore, I know very little about this subject. I imagine what you do is go up to the boss and say, here's a lovely pencil sharpener. It's all yours. Do you want to sleep with me? This would be the way you can ingratiate yourself and then get promotion through the system. I did this on the one day I did off-temping, and there was rather an unfortunate incident involving the aforementioned instrument for the making pointy bit of the lead, and, of course, the thing in which we lay.
Clement Freud challenge.
We've had a thing
You've
before.
had a thing before.
Yeah, so did the boss as well.
Yes, that's right. You can't substitute that word too often. Right, so Clement, another correct challenge. Point to you, 16 seconds available. Tell us something about office politics, starting now.
I understand that the important thing about office politics is to take your sexual pleasures from people within your wage range. The mistake is when you are the boss and you try and have it off with a secretary, a cleaner, or someone.
Well, Clement Freud was then speaking as the whistle went and gained the extra point again, but he got other points in the run, so Clement really, you see, is getting all the points. Graham has got a bonus point. Tony went again for about 40 seconds and didn't get anything, but this is the irony of this particular game. Let's move on now and ask Pam Ayres to take the next round. Pam, the subject here is going to the dentist. 60 seconds starting now.
Oh, the agony of going to the dentist, the grip of fear upon the insides, the sinking of the heart as the loathsome building comes into view, the sinister tone of the doorbell, and on walking in, the unmistakable, impossible to disguise smell of the place. Oh, imagine the scene, the magazines, the huddle of plastic toys, the thick board books for the very young. Can you hear the sounds, the distant drill in the marrow of somebody else's teeth? The traffic in the street, the receptionist making appointments with other victims, and then the approach of footsteps and your name being called. Oh!
Pam Ayres, first time on Just a Minute. First subject. She went with it with style and panache, and she kept going for 60 seconds. And so she gets a point for speaking when the whistle went, but a bonus point for not being interrupted. So, Pam, you're in second place now, behind Clement Freud. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Rovers. Tell us something about Rovers, starting now.
Rovers were very favourite magazines of mine, together with Wizard, Champion, Triumph, Adventure and Hotspur, mostly printed by Thompsons of Dundee. But Rovers are also tickets which you can get on a regionalised railway line.
Tony challenge.
I think there was a hesitation there.
Well,
Like
that's a stumble we call a hesitation, yes. So, Tony, 44 seconds available. Tell us something about Rovers, starting now.
I often wonder to myself, who are the best Rovers? Is it Tranmere, Blackburn, or Bristol? It's difficult to know which side the audience will be tonight. Presumably there will be some bitter City fans in here thinking, we don't want him to go on and pay a lot of compliments to those 11...
Pay a lot of what?
Compliments.
Yeah, I sense a hesitation, yes.
Well, we call it hesitation or deviation from English as we understand it, whichever way you want. 23 seconds. Rovers with you, Graham, starting now.
I understand from what I've just heard that Rovers have something to do with Bristol. Does that mean that Roy of the Rovers comes from this fair city? I do hope so. Glancing around the audience, I see people, possibly sporty types. Is one of them the boy's name that I...
Tony challenge.
I think there was a hesitation as he nearly said
there
Roy
wasn't.
again.
Yeah, no.
Oh.
I don't think
I
so.
think actually Graham thought there was a slight hesitation.
No, I don't think so. I felt it wasn't a hesitation. Difficult to judge sometimes.
Okay.
So, Graham, another point to you, and you, because an incorrect challenge, and you keep the subject. And there are 7 seconds available still for Rovers, starting now.
The Rovers' return is a popular pub in Coronation Street, and in design terms, quite odd, because there's more room.
So Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's now equal with Clement Freud in the lead. And Graham, it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is squash. Tell us something about squash in this game, starting now.
My favourite episode of Casualty ever began in the squash court. I thought, what's going to happen here? A broken leg, a twisted ankle. No, the person fell over, broke the squash racket, and ended up sticking the handle of it in their neck. I'm not making this up. It was on television. It was quite graphic and gruesome.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition.
Of what?
I forget.
I think that deserves a bonus point because they enjoyed what you said. But I'm afraid you haven't got a correct challenge within the rules of Just a Minute. So, Graham, 35 seconds still available. Another point to you for the interruption, of course. Squash starting now.
I grew up drinking squash. It was supposed to be a pleasant soft drink. It was, in fact, tap water with a slight bit of colour.
Clement challenge.
Three wases.
It's true, because what you repeated before was, it was,
Yeah.
it was. And now you've said was. So actually... So, Clement, you caught up on yourself, and you've got the subject and a point. And 27 seconds squash starting now.
It is a game which shouldn't be played by anyone with a heart condition. And I use that term very widely because most people have pectoris of some kind or another, and squash must not be...
Pam, you've challenged.
Well, I'd say that was a hesitation.
And you would be right, Pam. I would agree with that. We know where the audience sympathies lies. You're going to get applauded every time you say anything. You have 11 seconds to tell us something about squash, starting now.
In my garden...
Yes, Clement, your turn.
Hesitation.
No.
Cantos next week.
I think that was a generous gesture amongst other things. Another point to Pam Ayres, and still the subject of squash with her. 9 seconds starting now.
In my garden, I like to grow...
Tony?
I'm afraid this is a bit cruel, but that's a repetition of In My Garden.
No, that was another round she talked about In My Garden.
No. Just this second, she said that.
Did she? Oh, well, that's all right. Thanks very much.
It's very cruel because she was only getting going, but I thought I've only got 1 point. I haven't said
It's quite true.
anything
You
for
have
ages.
only got 1 point. You've spoken quite a lot.
As the Sharon Stone of Bristol, I object, mate.
So, Tony, another point to you, and you've got 7 seconds. Tell us something about squash, starting now.
I've never understood why businessmen insist on playing this game to relax when they get on the...
Pam challenged.
He irritated me. I was irritated.
All right, only because of the audience reaction, we give Pam a bonus point for that. Because quite a novel way of playing the game, but... the audience reaction means I give you a bonus point.
Oh, thank you.
But Tony also gets a point because he was interrupted, and he has 2 seconds to continue on squash, starting now.
A glass of squash with Pam after the show.
Well, it's very even at the moment. Pam Ayres, with some help from Clement Freud with his challenges, has brought her right up equal with Clement in the lead, and only 1 point behind is Graham Norton, and now Tony, with some help, has jumped up, and he's only 1 point behind Graham. And Tony, your turn to begin. What a lovely subject here for Bristol. A great Bristolian, Cary Grant. Ooh. It's all come back. They're all nudging each other. Oh, he came from Bristol, you know. Anyway, would you tell us something about Cary Grant in 60 seconds, starting now?
It will come as some surprise to you that Cary Grant was born in Bristol under the name Archibald Leach, but he must have been a very odd figure indeed to leave such a beautiful city and head off for Los Angeles and Hollywood to try and make fame there when he could have come to the Old Vic Theatre and had a wonderful career here. But there you go, that's him and it's nothing to do with me. But what I will say is I enjoyed watching him very much in that film directed by Alfred Hitchcock, North by Ditto West. And I thought it was very good because the way he was running around underneath an aircraft, which I believe was trying to spray some sort of thing on top of him. He ducked down in the cornfields. Oh, what a heroic figure. English, you know. Did I mention he was from this part of the world? I can't remember.
Clement Freud challenged.
Yes, he had.
Right,
Bristol, I think it was.
Yes, you did repeat.
No, I said this part of the world the second time.
Well, another point to you then. And 7 seconds. Tell us more about Cary Grant, starting now.
Some people have likened me to the great Cary Grant. And why not? I have the elegant looks, the speaking voice.
So Tony Hawk started with the subject and finished with the subject, but he was interrupted on the way, so he got a point for being interrupted. He got a point for speaking as the whistle went. He's now equal with Pam Ayres and Clement Freud in the lead, and only 1 point behind is Graham Norton. And Pam, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is husbands. Tell us something about husbands in just a minute, starting now.
Husbands have largely been overtaken by partners. Now, the modern image of a husband is of a reliable, dull, old plodder, laden down with cares about his children, his grandchildren, his mortgage repayments, his diminishing pension. See him in your mind's eye as he digs his garden, turning the sod.
Graham, you challenged.
Well, now I don't know. It was de-turning the sod. It was a hesitation, I thought, before turning the sod.
That was my accent.
Silly me.
No, I don't think she hesitated. I mean,
what did she say then?
I don't know, but it wasn't.
You're in a very odd mood tonight, Nicholas.
I know, but...
Are you listening to any of this?
She was
keeping you up?
She was turning the soil, but they obviously do it in a different way in Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
Obviously.
What?
They deter it instead of turning it.
Fair enough. I'm an idiot.
Right. So, Pam, the benefit of the doubt, and 34 seconds. Continue on husbands, starting now.
Making his way through the wearisome tasks to the merciful end. Partners, on the other hand...
Graham challenge.
Well, now, I might be wrong. Was it partner before and then
Yes.
partners this time?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, one was the plural.
You could have got away with that one, you know, if you hadn't said partner and partners.
Right, I'd get away with that, which is wrong. Or to say the nice lady stumbled over deturning soil, that's madness.
26 seconds, Pam. Another point. Husband, starting now.
On the...
Yes?
I thought there was a hesitation.
I think you Pam, I'm sorry, I can't be kind on that one again. So it was a hesitation. Yes, it was 1.5 seconds, actually. 25 seconds for you, Tony, on husbands, starting now.
I have a completely different picture of husbands to Pam. I see them as virile, fine, upstanding men, deturning the sod in the garden if they like, doing whatever they please in a heroic way, going out, earning a fine wage, returning, giving it to the children.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of turning.
One was deturning and the other one was turning. We all know deturning is one word.
That's right. So, Tony, you have another point. You still have husbands and you still have 9 seconds starting now.
There was a Woody Allen.
Clement challenge.
Mumble.
Mumble. There was a Woody Allen. Who's running the show?
Yes.
No.
In fairness to the audience, Nicholas, somebody has to. They realise there's a big gap in the middle of the stage. They're just taking over.
Tony, 7 seconds. Husbands, with you, starting now.
Film by that American director called Husbands and Wives. And I watched this to see if there were any...
Well, Tony Hawkes is then speaking as the whistle went, and with the other points he gained in that round, including one for speaking as the whistle went, has taken him into the lead ahead of Pam Ayres and Clement Freud and Graham Norton in that order. And Clement, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is Dutch courage. Tell us something about that in this show, starting now.
Dutch courage is bravery shown in the light of drunkenness, as opposed to Transylvanian bravery, which is...
Tony challenge.
Repetition of bravery.
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
Another point to you, Tony.
Didn't
51
want
seconds.
Thank God we're all agreed.
51 seconds, Tony, on Dutch courage, starting now.
I always thought someone who had Dutch courage was Ruud Gullit for having that hairstyle. Because he would run around that pitch, it would bounce up and down in an extraordinary way, and I thought, there's a figure with Dutch courage. And I'd sometimes tell my chums.
Clement Freud.
Repetition of thought.
Yes, you did think twice. And you used the word thought. So, Clement, another point to you, 34 seconds. Dutch courage, starting now.
In a restaurant, you would say to your partner, shall we go Dutch or run away before the bill comes? And Brussels...
Tony challenged.
I thought there was a hesitation.
Yeah, it was so small, I'm not going to allow it.
OK, fair enough.
I mean, you have to judge sometimes. So. Benefit of the doubt to Clement on this occasion, and he keeps the subject. 25 seconds. Dutch courage, starting now.
Daffodils, windmills, Amsterdam and Rotterdam, quite apart from Queen Wilhelmina, are the...
Now, I can't gauge. Myself, I look to you, Nicholas. Was that a hesitation? It seemed like one to my untrained ear.
Graham, it was definitely a hesitation. 17 seconds. We're going to hear from you, Graham, on Dutch courage, starting now.
Imagine the amount of Dutch courage you would require to go home if you lived in a windmill. Bad enough sober, but drunk, trying to get your key into the door with that huge thing just swooshing around, jumping back and forward. It doesn't bear...
Well, I'm very pleased you got in on that subject because they loved it. Right. And you were speaking as a whistle when you gained an extra point. You've leapt forward. And you're still in fourth place. But but you're only 1 point behind Pam Ayres and Clement Freud, and they're 2 behind Tony Hawkes, who's in the lead. And Tony, your turn to begin. The subject is in the doghouse. Can you take that subject and go with it for 60 seconds, if possible, starting now?
I wonder if I've rather mischievously been given this subject, because a while back I wrote a book called Round Island with a Fridge, and those that have read it will know that in this I slept in a doghouse with a member of the opposite sex, and had the courage, Dutch perhaps, to write it down and recount every last detail. Oh. I can see the people here want those facts now, but they can go out to a bookshop if they want those. However, what I will say, that if you're in the doghouse, usually people think bad things about you. You've upset people in a little way, and I've said people 3 times.
He's said people.
Yes, people. You've got another point, Clement. You've got the subject, and you have 20 seconds in the doghouse, starting now.
In the doghouse, or dans la maison des chiens, im Haus von dem Hund, is a very popular expression for being in bad...
Tony, you challenge.
Well, normally, you see, we don't pick up on words like in, but when you say them consecutively, you do.
So, Tony, correct challenge. Repetition and hesitation, whatever you want. 6 seconds in the doghouse, starting now.
I would be in the doghouse with this Bristol audience were I to say Tranmere Rovers are a finer team than the other 11.
Right, so at the end of that round, Tony Hawkes was again speaking as a whistle went. He gained an extra point for doing so, of course. He's got in a lead, he's definite lead. He's just ahead of Clement Freud, who's 2 or 3 ahead of Pam Ayres, and she's equal in third place with Graham Norton. So we only have time for one more round, and it's Pam Ayres' turn to begin. And the subject, Pam, very apt for someone who talks about her garden and all that, is chicks. I know you got any chicks, but tell us about chicks. 60 seconds, starting now.
Chicks are interesting creatures and may be ordered at 1 day old, when they will be sent to you probably by road. At this time, they do not require any feeding because their bodies contain the vestiges of the yolk sac which has sustained them within...
Graham, you've challenged.
I felt sick.
But I enjoyed the information, the fact that they would be sent to you probably by road.
Hey, wait, Graham, so you were sick. That's your challenge.
I just felt it deviated from just good taste.
No, what? Look, he gets a bonus point because he was sick. And,
I'm not proud, I'll take it.
Because the audience enjoyed his comment and reaction, so he gets his bonus for that. But Pam keeps the subject and a point because you were interrupted, and you still have chicks, and you have 42 seconds starting now.
Upon receipt of your chicks, you will discover that the 2 main threats to their well-being are predators and cold. Mink and rats will devour your chicks if you let them, and an infrared overhead lamp must be suspended close to them in order that they do not become chilled, which will kill them off quicker than anything.
Tony, challenge, and what is your challenge?
Well, I think hesitation because he stopped completely.
I have to in case you said something different. So, Tony, you have a point for that. You have chicks. You have 10 seconds starting now.
I ordered some chicks once, expecting them to be delivered by road, but they weren't. They were airdropped in by a helicopter. A man was up there and he held them
So, Tony Hawk, speaking as a whistle went, not only gained that extra point, but he brought that round and that show to end with a certain style and panache. And I'll give you the final score. Graham Norton was equal with Pam Ayres in third place, but they were only 1 point behind Clement Freud, but he was a few points behind Tony Hawk. So, Tony, we say this week, you are our winner. And so we have no more time to play just a minute. So it only remains to say thank you to these four intrepid and delightful players of the game. Graham Norton, Tony Hawkes, Clement Freud and Pam Ayres. I also thank Claire Bartlett for helping with the score and blowing her whistle so delicately after the 60 seconds. And I thank our producer and director, Claire Jones, who contributes so much. And also we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game. And we are deeply indebted to this lovely audience here in this beautiful Old Vic Theatre in Bristol, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and the panel, goodbye, and tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my infinite pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but those who listen to this show throughout the world. But also it's such a huge pleasure to welcome to this show four outstanding, resourceful, and talented players of the game. It's a pleasure to have back with us once more one of our country's most talented and inventive and creative comedians, Paul Merton. Beside him sits another highly creative and talented and witty writer and performer, Kit Hesketh-Harvey, and on my left we have another young comedian who's very original and resourceful, that is Ross Noble, and beside him another delightful stand-up comedian and actor, that is Steve Frost. Would you please welcome all four of them? Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who will help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Picture Playhouse Theatre in that delightful and picturesque town of Beverley in East Yorkshire. And we are part of the Beverley Comedy Festival. I'll explain to our listeners that cheer was because it's the first comedy festival in Beverley, and they're making it a first and memorable occasion. And we have in front of us a very excited, hyped-up Yorkshire audience who are just ready and keen to enjoy the fun as we start the show with Paul Merton. And Paul, the subject I have in front of me is What I Love About Queuing. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Well, it's about how you make your hands work. Your left hand must form a bridge. Your right can be bringing the cue forward. It's very important to keep the eye on the object ball. Probably the white one if you're playing snooker or billiards. And what you have to do is to make sure your geometric angles are spot on. If there's a red, you want to go into the top pocket, then you knock the spherical object towards the reddish ball. I've said ball twice.
Kit, you Hesketh-Harvey, you
So two balls, I'm afraid.
Yes, I know. We don't want too many balls in Just a Minute, but that is repetition. So, yes. Kit, you have a correct challenge, which means you get a point for that. You take over the subject. There are 30 seconds available, and tell us something about what I love about queuing, starting now.
I was waiting in the malodorous back passages of this beautiful cinema here in Beverley, and I looked at the queue of people of Beverley. I said Beverley twice. Yeah. You can't have enough Beverley.
Well, some people think you can't say Beverley too often, but certainly the people in front of us here. Yes, apparently this is the oldest active cinema in the country.
Is it really?
Yes.
It smells like it, yes.
Paul, you challenge for repetition of Beverley, yes. And you have the subject back again. You have 22 seconds. What I love about queuing, starting now.
Well, it's very democratic, isn't it? If the Lord Onslow is queuing up behind a dustman, they...
Steve Frost, you pressed your buzzer. What is your challenge?
You can't remember.
No. It was deviation.
Why?
Because Lord Onslow would never queue. He'd send a butler to do it.
It is quite possible that Lord Onslow would queue. Yeah. We have no proof that he doesn't queue. Yeah. We don't even know if Lord Onslow exists.
He doesn't.
But there's no reason why a lord shouldn't queue behind a dustman.
No,
so,
exactly.
Strictly speaking, he was not deviating from the subject. So, Paul, an incorrect challenge. Another point to you. 16 seconds available. What I love about queuing, starting now.
The British are fantastic at it, and they don't mind whether it be outside a fishmonger's or a cobbler's. There's nothing they're more like than they go forward.
Ross challenge.
There's nothing it's more like.
What, deviation
from
English as we understand it? Or as it is normally spoken. Right. So, Ross, yes, I would agree with that challenge. So you have a point, and you have 7 seconds, and you tell us something about what I love about queuing starting now.
I like queuing because you can stand at the back and pretend you're in a conga line at a very dull party.
Whoever is speaking in this game when the whistle goes gains an extra point, and this occasion it was Ross Noble. So, Ross, you have 2 points at the end of the round, so has Paul Merton. Kit has 1, Steve has yet to score, but it's early days, and Steve, your turn to begin. The subject is igloos. Tell us something about igloos in this game, starting now.
The first thing you need, if you want to make a very good igloo, is, of course, some...
Paul, challenge.
Was it? It's all, I always get... What do you mean? I always forget.
Hesitation. I think you would call that hesitation. A complete dry up, a complete mental block, and...
That's it, block, that's it.
It was an ice block you need, not the mental block. Paul, a correct challenge. 55 seconds available. Igloos starting now.
The Eskimos build igloos. I don't know if they resemble the objects we see in cartoons. Vaguely, it's like a dome-like effect made out of ice and snow, I suppose. The idea being that in the harsh winter months in Eskimo land, they can hide into this little igloo and feel nice and warm and snug. You build a fire in the middle, and you have a bicycle where you can power...
So, Steve, what was your challenge now?
It was deviation, because if you light a fire in an igloo, it will melt.
Oh, it will. You're quite right, yes.
I didn't say it wouldn't.
I know. That is the difficulty I have. Because you can light a fire, but it would be a rather foolish and dangerous thing to do.
Would be foolish.
If you had him for the bicycle, that would have been all right, because I don't think you would ride a bicycle in an igloo.
Don't be stupid, they all got one.
All right. So, Paul, an incorrect challenge. Another point to you, and 34 seconds. Igloos starting now.
Apparently, they have 33 different words for fire extinguisher, which is what you need when you're building a conflagration in the middle of your...
Kit's challenge.
Conflagration.
Oh, I don't know.
I wasn't quite sure. Deviation from Inuit as it is spelt,
Right.
I think.
Well, if we're going to pick people up on grammar, what chance have I got?
25 seconds with you, Kit, on igloos starting now.
I once stayed in one of those igloo hotels that Craig Doyle is so frightfully keen on. The Corby trouser press disappeared through the floor. I ended up on an ice floe somewhere 18 miles north-northwest of Reykjavik. I took a hot shower.
Paul, challenge.
Well, if you say somewhere 18 miles, that's exactly where you are. If I say somewhere 18 miles north-northwest of Reykjavik, that's precisely where you are.
Paul, another point to you. 14 seconds. Igloos starting now.
Perhaps the finest igloo joke I know, and I'm sure you're prepared for this, are 2 Eskimos... I said Eskimo before.
No, you did. Ross, you jumped.
This is really petty, but it's igloo, but it's igloos on the card.
Igloos is on the card, and use the word igloo before.
So it's repetition. Sorry, I hadn't said anything for a while, and I thought...
I know, but it shows you are concentrating. So you've got igloos now.
I don't really want it now.
But no, that ooh was a ooh of appreciation.
No, it wasn't. It was a ooh of let's get pitchforks and run them out.
I think it was appreciation. Ross, there are 8 seconds. You tell us something about igloos starting now.
The Eskimo people have 50 words for snow, but not a single one for patio doors. That's because they don't know what a patio is.
The whistle came. You were saved by the whistle. It came in infinitesimally before the challenge from Paul, so you got that extra point for speaking when the whistle went, Ross, and you're 1 point behind our leader, Paul Merton. And Kit, it's your turn to begin, and the subject, so apt for this lovely county of Yorkshire, Yorkshire pudding. And you have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Surely nothing has contributed to human happiness as much as the Yorkshire pudding from this fair county which it so resembles.
Paul, challenge.
Alcohol.
Though I would disagree with the challenge, Paul, what I do on these...
You think Yorkshire pudding's made more people happier than alcohol?
It's made me more happy, and therefore I think there's a lot of
let's
other
put it
people.
to the audience.
Now, what I will do is, because the audience enjoyed your challenge, which was very amusing and creative, we give you a bonus point for that. But as he wasn't strictly speaking, deviating within the rules of Just a Minute, Kit gets a point for being interrupted. He keeps the subject of Yorkshire pudding, 54 seconds, starting now.
It's craggy edges like Michael Parkinson. It's soggy bottom like Nora Batty's knicker elastic.
Challenge.
2 likes.
Yes, 2 likes, yes.
Them's are the rules.
I know, they are the rules, but sometimes you can't win your audience with them. Right, Paul, the correct challenge. 49 seconds, Yorkshire pudding, starting now.
If you want to make the perfect Yorkshire pudding, then what you have to do is...
The Kit challenge.
To use.
If you have to make... Hoisted on your own verbal petard.
More of a vowel sound, really.
But it was a correct challenge. He's got his own back, and you have a point, Kit, of course, and you have the subject. And you have 45 seconds, Yorkshire pudding, starting now.
Making a well in the flour into which you pour your egg and milk mixture. I, on the contrary, prefer to put the farinaceous substance into the fluid and then put it in a sizzling hot baking tray.
Paul's challenge.
Put. Repetition of put.
It's very silly.
You were putting too much into this subject, Kit. Paul, you have 33 seconds. You tell us something about Yorkshire pudding, starting now.
To make the most perfect Yorkshire pudding, what you do is, first of all, you must get your milk, and then egg, and stir it deeply until it is ripe and ready to eat.
For the sake of our listeners abroad, I should explain that Paul Merton was then doing an impersonation of Clement Freud, and a very good one as well. He's regularly on our show, and is, of course, a great gourmet, and he used to be in the catering business. But, Ross, you challenge.
Yeah, you used to have a kebab van, didn't you?
Do you want fries with that?
Years.
What was your challenge?
Well, deviation from his own personality. And a repetition of milk.
Yes, he did say the milk more than once, yes. So, Ross, you have the subject of Yorkshire pudding, and 19 seconds starting now.
Yorkshire pudding was the greatest professional wrestler that ever lived. He used to run into the ring, but he preferred a circle.
Steve Ross challenge.
He was so big he never ran into the ring. He used to waddle into the ring. So deviation.
Within the rule, no, it's not deviation. I mean, even if he waddled on occasions, he still could run into the ring, and that might have been his way of running, and your way.
Are we not losing sight of the fact that there was no wrestler ever called?
How dare you, sir?
He certainly wasn't the finest wrestler. Yorkshire pudding.
That
the name is a giveaway, surely.
It might have been his nickname, you never know. Anyway, it was an incorrect challenge, Ross, and you keep the subject, and you have 12 seconds, Yorkshire pudding starting now.
One of the latest things that supermarkets offer is big Yorkshire puddings. Now, I think that this is wrong. In fact, what you should do is get a cabbage and pretend it's a massive Brussels sprout, because that way you can...
So Ross Noble was speaking of the whistle when, getting an extra point for doing so. He's got quite a few points. It's one behind our leader, who's still Paul Merton, followed by Kit Hesketh-Harvey and then Steve Frost. And Ross, it's your turn to begin. The subject is getting a tan. Would you tell us something about getting a tan? You've just come back from a hot country, haven't you?
I have just come back from Australia,
Australia, right. So you know all about the heat and the sun and the tans. Tell us something about the subject, starting now.
The best way to get a tan in this country is to go to your nearest kebab shop and hug the meat. Simply wrap your arms around it and allow it to rotate next to that lovely hot surface. You might find that you'll need to apply not lotion but mayonnaise into your skin as you gently sizzle for everybody's pleasure and delight. Possibly a large Greek man might get a pita bread and wrap you in it and gently rock you to sleep as you sing him popular folk songs about what it's like to gently...
Oh, they enjoyed that flight of fantasy. But you challenged Paul Merton.
Yes, a repetition of gently.
That's right. 26 seconds with you, Paul. Getting a tan starting now.
Well, we're told these days it's actually inadvisable to try and get a tan, and if you do go out in the sun, then you must put on some sun factor 26, which is in fact an anorak. And when you are out in the rays of that shining orb in the sky, you must protect yourself because there are all kinds of nasty diseases that can be caught from those very infrared ray beams coming at you. I think the best way of getting a tan, undoubtedly, is to go to a sun...
So Paul Merton getting a tan kept him going to the whistle, gained an extra point for doing so, and he has increased his lead slightly over Ross Noble and marginally, well, more than marginally over Kit Hesketh-Harvey and considerably over Steve Frost, and that's the order. Steve Frost, your turn to begin, and the subject is how to score. I hope you won't be too intimate on this. I know you're a stand-up comedian. Tell us something about that subject in this game starting now.
First, raise your eyebrows. Second, catch their eye. Then roll it back to them, because that's not going to be any good to you. Of course, you need the right amount of hair on the top of your forehead where the aforementioned bodily...
Kit, you challenge.
It sort of stopped eventually. I mean, it was very magical, and he was wooing them, but...
They were wondering how the hell he could get anybody with that. It was a hesitation. So, Kit, you have the subject. 44 seconds, how to score, starting now.
I think it's the French composer Maurice Ravel who's generally acknowledged to be the master of this particular craft, how to score.
Ross challenge.
You haven't met my mate, Dave.
Ross, that wasn't
straight in like that every time. You know, the ladies are there, it doesn't even buy him a drink.
No challenge within the rules of just a minute. But the audience enjoyed it, and they applauded. So I will do what I've done with the others, give you a bonus point because they enjoyed that. Kit gets a point because he was interrupted. He keeps the subject, and there are 38 seconds. How to score starting now.
You take the flesh or meat or fowl and you slash it with a very sharp knife, and then you pour orange juice or lemon juice, oil or sarsaparilla.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of juice.
Juice, yes.
Juice, 2 juices, sorry.
Paul, you had a correct challenge. You have 29 seconds. How to score, starting now.
I remember when I started playing football for the Little League, which was an associated club system in Morden, a place that is just at the end of the Northern Line in London. And I wasn't very good as a professional footballer, which is just as well because we were amateurs. But I did once score a marvellous goal with my left boot. Unfortunately, I wasn't wearing it at the time. It was around my neck. The ball came off the crossbar, I seem to remember, from Johnny King. I've been taken back to those glorious days of 1968. The goalkeeper was befuddled. He didn't know what to do.
I love befuddled goalkeepers, yes. Lovely word, befuddled, right. But you kept going to the whistle, gained that extra point, increased your lead, and nobody spotted that you repeated the word football. And Kit, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is Neptune. Tell us something about that god or that whatever way you want to take the subject, starting now.
He was rather a late arrival at the planet's ball, wasn't he? There was an enormous thing called Uranus, Nicholas, and something was pulling in the opposite direction. They worked out there must be some vast body distorting the readings, and they named it after the Roman god Neptune, whose brothers were Zeus, in charge of the earth, and the Cray twins, who were in charge of the underworld. He was made god of the sea. He carried an enormous great triton, which looked like a crumpet fork. What sort of crumpets? Oh, blah, blah.
Oh, that's what happens in this game. We were going so magnificently, and there you got carried away with enthusiasm.
Halle Berry,
yes. Halle is 33 seconds, Paul. Sorry, you came in.
Can I just say, actually, I think he said crumpet and crumpets. Because I challenged on the second crumpet. You said crumpet fork, and then you said crumpets.
It's the igloo principle.
Yes, no, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. He said crumpet.
Oh, good look, how very honest and sweet of you, Paul. Thank you.
What a generous player. The most generous player of the game. I was going to say exactly the same thing, but I...
No, I could hear because I'm sitting next to him.
I know.
But how cool is that it now has the name the Igloo Principle? That's brilliant. It's like a straight-to-video release movie. The Igloo Principle.
So, we have established that he didn't repeat anything, so, Kit, you can carry on, which the audience were pleased about, and everybody, and you as well. And you have 33 seconds, and there's more about Neptune starting now.
I imagine that Gustav Holst must have a movement named after Neptune, but I can't for the life of me think how the tune goes. It's not as...
There was a double challenge there. Steve, I think you were fractionally earlier, so you have... What is your challenge?
Hesitation, I'm afraid.
Oh, yes, well, it was a stumble which we interpret as hesitation. Steve, tell us something about Neptune, and 26 seconds available starting now.
If you look at the planet Neptune through an 8-inch reflector telescope, you will notice that it is blue with a white dot on its northmost part.
Ross.
There's a bit of a hesitation.
Yes, there
there
was, yeah. He was trying to visualize the dot on the page. And Ross, you have 18 seconds. Tell us something about Neptune starting now.
We always hear about King Neptune, but we don't often get to listen about the rest of the I just wanted to avoid the igloo principle. That's all I was trying to do.
I think you've got jet lag, actually. You've just come back from Australia. But, Paul, what was the challenge?
Well, it was repetition of about.
Yeah, oh, yes, amongst other things. Right. 12 seconds, Paul. Tell us something about Neptune starting now.
I was having a conversation with Sir Patrick Moore once. He appeared on a television programme that I was on, and I asked him his idea of what Neptune would be like. And he said to me, and I never forget what he's actually... I'll be like...
Ross, you'll never forget it, will you? Ross, you've got in with half a second to go. What was it? It hasn't won you any friends, but what's your challenge?
He said.
He said hesitation, whatever you like.
I didn't say said twice. I hesitated.
Right, then he.
What's that?
And you hesitated as well.
I hesitate as well. I don't know what to say, because I normally accept the first challenge.
Can you hear what Patrick Moore said? I'm agog.
I'm going to hear in a minute.
What, in half a second?
In half a second. Oh, come on.
Patrick Moore speaks very quickly. I can get it in half a second.
We'll hear it afterwards. Half a second from you, Ross, on Neptune starting now. And Paul challenge.
Well, there was a definite hesitation there.
Yeah. I don't think so. I won't charge anything for that and say that you were speaking as the whistle went, Ross. Ross gets the extra point for speaking as the whistle went. And Ross, it's your turn to begin. Cheek. Tell us something about cheek in this game starting now.
Cheek is very important when pulling a moonie from a moving car. It is essentially the most important ingredient when...
Kit challenge.
So, 2 importance.
Yes, it was. So, Kit, you've got him on the important, and you have the subject, and 53 seconds, cheek, starting now.
I once came across a recipe for pig's cheek, which involved cleaving the skull of the animal, scooping out the brains, burying it in saltpeter and bay for 29 days, turning it regularly, and then smoking it for a further week. Very odd. It didn't catch on at all in this country. But it was something I would better have for
Paul challenge.
The hesitation.
Well, it was sort of rubbish, wasn't it? So we
Yes, but we can't start challenging on that. These buzzers can only last so much.
Right. So, yes, anyway, Paul, correct challenge, and you have cheek, and you have 35 seconds starting now.
Cheek, or nerve, as it's sometimes called, is quite an attractive quality, I think, in people. Where would we be today if Geoff Hurst hadn't have had the cheek to claim that goal that came off the crossbar? If you look at that match, there's no way the football went over the line, and yet somehow we were given the goals that won the match. Now, I think perhaps the marvellous Winston Churchill showed enormous amounts of cheek when he first came to the position of being Prime Minister, because up to that point he'd been a bit of the black sheep of English politics. The Conservatives didn't like him very much. In fact, he'd been a Liberal at some point.
So, Paul Merton, speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point and has moved forward ahead of Ross Noble, Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Steve Frost in that order. And, Paul, it's actually your turn to begin, and we're moving into the final round. Paul begins it. The life of Riley starting now.
Well, it's a miserable life. He's an alcoholic. He lives in a workman's hut in Balham. Nobody wants the life of Riley, least of all Riley. He used to be a very successful quiz show host, one of the best. Just a Minute was a show that he always enjoyed performing on. In fact, you might know him better under the name of Nicholas Parsons. I'm, of course, now talking about sometime in the future, around about March 2003. I don't know who Riley was originally.
Ross challenge.
Well, he was living in Balham before.
Yeah, but I don't know who he was originally. That's where he is now. But I don't know where he was originally.
He changed his identity to live in Balham.
I think you're technically an incorrect challenge, but 31 seconds, Paul. The Life of Riley starting now.
Drink flowed like wine, which is, funnily enough, is a drink.
So, Kit, your challenge.
Repetition of drink.
That's right,
Yes.
right. You have the subject, The Life of Riley. 27 seconds available starting now.
Bridget Riley, the painter, I think she must be about 70 now. She painted black and white things that give you epilepsy or mild headaches when you stare at them. I think her life involved started...
Steve Ross challenge.
Repetition of think.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, who did.
Yeah, I was
Correct
thinking
challenge.
too much.
Well listened, Steve. You've got him before the end. 18 seconds. The Life of Riley starting now.
Sitting on a beach, drinking beer, surrounded by beautiful women, with lots of gold falling off your lap, into the dogs that bay beneath your knees, looking at...
Paul challenge.
Where is this gold? This gold is falling into your lap from where? Into the mouths of dogs. Well, it's just right. It's deviation. Deviation, life as we know it.
Life as we know it, but that is a pure fantasy. But, I mean, can you challenge for fantasy?
Well, where's this gold coming from? It's dropping into your lap.
Well, if you hadn't interrupted, I would have told you.
Okay.
I must be fair to Steve. I mean, this could be that he did have all this gold, and he did... As the dog's baying around him, that's what got me.
It's a worry, isn't it?
That's a real worry, because, I mean, if he's like that, and that is not a really happy picture, whereas the rest was a very exotic picture. But I think I give you the benefit of the doubt, because I don't think you were deviating within the rules of just a minute, and you have 8 seconds to continue on The Life of Riley, starting now.
If I won the lottery, the first thing I would go out and do...
Paul challenge.
Well, deviation. He said he was going to tell us how this gold landed in his lap. If he was given the chance.
Maybe he won the lottery.
He's been given the chance, and now he's starting talking about the lottery.
It was the lottery. It was just pouring it down into his lap.
Look, in the rules of just a minute, you can start off on something and leave it and carry on and talk about something else. It's not that you have to continue on the same theme throughout. You have gone off in different directions all the time when you're talking about that. So, Steve, you're doing well. You're catching up like mad.
I know a lot about The Life of Riley.
But I don't know whether you're going to get enough points in the last 4 seconds. But have a go. Life of Riley starting now.
Not...
Paul, challenge.
How many points does he need?
More than you can give him in 4 seconds. Life of Riley is still with you, and another point, of course. 3 seconds starting now.
Getting 3 points on just a minute surely is the ultimate life of...
So we have no more time to play just a minute. Let me give you the final situation. But as I say, basically, I mean, they're all winners in this show because it's the contribution that matters. But you're interested, if you're interested in the points, Steve Frost, who was trailing nowhere a while ago, in that last round, leapt forward. He was still in 4th place, but he was... Well, actually, no, he leapt forward into 3rd place alongside Kit Hesketh-Harvey. But in 2nd place, only a few points ahead was Ross Noble, but quite a considerable number of points ahead was Paul Merton. So we say, Paul, in this particular game, you are the winner. It only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Kit Hesketh-Harvey, Ross Noble and Steve Frost. I thank Claire Bartlett for helping with the score and blowing her whistle so delicately. And also we thank our producer, Claire Jones, for the way she directs and produces the show. And we are indebted to Messiter, who created this particular idea. And we are most grateful to this lovely Yorkshire audience here at the Picture Playhouse Theatre in Beverley, who've cheered us on our way. From the audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, and our panel, goodbye till we tune in and play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show 4 experienced, talented, and clever players of this game. We're delighted to welcome back that master of improvised comedy and repartee who's shone in the show so often, that is Paul Merton. He's sitting on my right with the man who's been in the show longer than anybody else on the panel, shows his wit and literacy nearly every time he speaks, and that is Clement Freud. And on my left we have one of the icons of the entertainment profession. She's been with us so long that she's starred in so many comedy shows we can't remember them all, and that is Wendy Richard. She's just escaped from her soap, and beside her sits one of the new stars on the comedy firmament, the lovely Lisa Tarbuck. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score. She'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And as usual, I'm going to ask our 4 players of the game to speak on the subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And this particular show is coming from the Drill Hall. And we're in just off the West End of London, and we have a fantastic cosmopolitan audience drawn from every part of this great metropolis. But anyway, they are ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Paul Merton. Paul, the subject I have in front of me is why I never use Cockney rhyming slang. You have 60 seconds as usual. Tell us something about that in this game starting now.
It was, of course, invented by the Duke of Clarence, the well-known pub in the East End. The reason why I don't use Cockney rhyming slang is because I don't particularly understand it, and I don't know anybody that does. If I was to say to a friend of mine, "How's your plates?" they would react in a strange, incomprehensible way because they would not know that I was referring to the state of their feet. This, I think, is the problem with the Cockney rhyming slang. Quite often the slang... I nearly hesitated, but I didn't.
Clement Freud challenge.
Deviated from Cockney rhyming slang.
Where?
He hesitated.
I think it was repetition of ha.
Yeah. Now, your first challenge was a deviation, which I couldn't allow.
Ah.
So I'm afraid if you'd gone for the hesitation, it would have been different. At least it's too late, darling.
Hesitation.
Yes.
It's too late.
It's too late. No, the first challenge I have to accept, and he wasn't deviating. So, Paul, you still have the subject. You get a point for an incorrect challenge, and you carry on with why I never use Cockney rhyming slang, starting now.
Up the apples, of course, refers.
Clement challenge.
Repetition of course.
Yes. It was right. Quite early on, why you said it, of course, I never use it. Yes, right at the beginning you said, of course, I never use it very much because...
Yes.
And Clement has got in there. And Clement Freud has got in with a correct challenge, so he gets a point for that, and he takes over the subject. There are 29 seconds available. Why I never use Cockney rhyming slang, starting now.
The reason I never use Cockney rhyming slang is predominantly because I'm not a Cockney. Similarly, I do not wear Chinese clothing in view of the fact that I do not come from the Orient. Nevertheless, when in Beijing some years ago, I inquired...
Wendy Richard challenge.
I think Clem's starting to deviate.
I think he has deviated. He's gone away from Cockney rhyming slang into the Orient and talking about the clothes he wears and everything. So
he could have been talking about Leighton Orient. We don't know, do we?
Right, I still think he was deviated. So, Wendy, a correct challenge, a point to you, and there are 11 seconds. You tell us something about why I never use Cockney rhyming slang, starting now.
I never use Cockney rhyming slang, even though the programme I'm currently appearing in is supposed to be about these East End people. In fact, no one ever uses Cockney rhyming slang.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Wendy Richard, and therefore she's in the lead at the end of the round. Lisa, I'd like you to take the next round. And we have in front of us red tape. So can you tell us something about red tape in this game, starting now?
Red tape is obstructive official procedure that is formal or sticks rigidly to certain rules that might be deemed non-commonsensical. For example, if I were to dig up the road outside the drill hall today, I would ask the gas, the electricity, the TV, the broadband, all of them to get together and put everything in the same hole. Now, red tape would bind me into waiting.
Wendy challenged.
I think you might be struggling a wee bit, and anyway, they use red and white tape.
Thank you.
I think you were getting rather devious there. I really wasn't following your train of thought at all.
Red tape, stopping digging holes. Come on.
They were digging the holes, and they were putting all that stuff into the holes.
Who were?
No, she's only pretend, Nicholas. There wasn't a hole there at all.
So what is your... Listen, I'm supporting you, Wendy. What was your challenge?
Sense. I've forgotten now.
Oh, right.
Anyway, it's when they have holes and things like that, it's usually red and white tape, not red tape.
It's often yellow, actually, yes.
No, it's yellow for a different sort of utility
Crime
that's
scene.
being dug
Are
up.
you enjoying it?
There's going to be yellow tape in a minute.
I kept this conversation going because of all the people who listen around the world
I know
who
it's
would like
blue
to
and
know
white
what
for
happens
police.
when we dig holes in the road in our country. Well, right, Wendy has given in the ghost, and Lisa, you are still with it. You have a point for an incorrect challenge. You keep the subject.
Thank you.
32 seconds, red tape starting now.
It was a term coined in the 18th century because government ministers and lawyers used to bind their papers up with red tape or ribbon. Apparently, Charles Dickens brought the phrase into common parlance.
Paul challenge.
There was an in there.
There was a hesitation, yes. Paul, you've got
Shame, I know. But I wouldn't feel right about myself if I hadn't have challenged.
You've got red tape, and you have 19 seconds, starting now.
I like nothing better than getting a box of red tape and dressing it all around my living room. It adds gaiety to any occasion. Invite your neighbours round for a drink and they say, "Where is the alcohol?" I haven't got any, but look at this red tape. It's beautiful, draped by the windows.
Wendy challenge.
Have we had more than one drape?
No. No, it was tape before, not drape done.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
That's
Sorry,
right.
Paul.
No, we like keenness. Well done. There are only 3 seconds to go, but it was a wrong challenge, so Paul, you have another point. 3 seconds, red tape starting now.
The best thing about red tape, and I want you to know this, is that it's absolute...
So Paul Merton speaking as the whistle went, gone that extra point on the occasion. With others in the round, he's taking the lead now. He's ahead of Wendy Richard, and Clement, Freud and Lisa Tarbuck follow, and Wendy, we'd like you to take the next round. The subject is pulling power. I'm sure you've got a lot of that, and you've displayed it on many occasions, but tell us about it now in this game, starting now.
The best form of pulling power is to have power. Once one is in such a position, you can pull anything or anyone you desire. I've got my
Lisa challenge.
That was a dry mouth, wasn't it?
That's right,
Some
yes.
hesitation, yeah.
And we'd like to hear from you on pulling power, Lisa, and there are 49 seconds available, starting now.
Pulling power can best be used when in a pub and standing behind a pump and gradually easing maybe the Guinness back, pouring it with the glass slightly tilted and easing it in. Now, it takes...
Wendy challenged.
2 easings.
It was too much easing, my love.
Oh, easing.
Yes.
There'll be a lot of that.
So, Wendy, you've got pulling power back, and you have 36 seconds to tell us something about it, starting now. And...
Listen, you're always doing that to me on this programme. You are at least allowed to draw breath before you start.
No, Wendy, actually, in this game, I always give a pause before the now, so they can draw the breath before that, and I say, and you start now. So we go straight off, otherwise they will be in like knives. And I'm afraid it was a long pause. You pause for a whole second.
Well, I have to take a big breath.
So, Clement, I have to agree with you, and you have the correct challenge, 35 seconds on pulling power, starting now.
I always remember Wendy Richard in the Strongest Man series, in which she pulled a double-decker number 159 bus up Primrose Hill, holding these...
Paul challenge.
159 doesn't go up Primrose Hill. You go up there. Goes to Brixton.
I know,
well,
right.
and on to Streatham, in fact.
That's where she was pulling it.
That's where she... Listen, Paul, it doesn't matter for what Clement was saying, because he could have been putting the bus anywhere, any number. But we did enjoy your interruption, so we give Paul a bonus point for that. And Clement... Clement gets a point for being interrupted and keeps the subject with 22 seconds available. Pulling power starting now.
Pulling power appears to be a woman, usually or occasionally man's, ability to seduce either physically or even...
Yes, sir.
There was a hesitation there.
I'm afraid so.
I was only drawing a breath.
I think you drew the breath because you wondered where you were taking the listeners on Radio 4 at that moment. And maybe discretion was a better path of valour, and you paused. Paul, you have a correct challenge in 11 seconds. Tell us something about pulling power, starting now.
Well, it's all to do with perceived status, I suppose. If somebody looks at you and thinks, oh, he's quite attractive because A, he has money, or B, he has influence, C...
Wendy and Lisa, your lights came on together.
Oh.
So I don't know what we do on that occasion.
You can have it.
Lisa,
That's
she's
very
given it
nice
to
of
you.
you.
So what is your challenge?
Repetition of he has, actually.
Yes, he did say he has twice. That's right. So, Lisa, you've cleverly got in with 2 seconds to go on pulling power starting now.
My friend Sarah...
Lisa Tarbuck was then speaking as the whistle went, so gained that extra point and others in the round. She's now in second place behind Paul Merton, and Wendy Richard and Clement Freud are equal in third place, only 1 point behind. Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is Eskimos. Tell us something about Eskimos in this game, starting now.
If you're into blubber, igloos, or rubbing noses with people of whom you're fond, I would recommend that you become an Eskimo as soon as you possibly can. Eskimos tend to live in the north of Canada, in Labrador, Greenland, and they are squat, not hugely attractive, with only limited pulling power, but they waddle about and they really enjoy snow, for which commodity they have 27 different words. This is an interesting fact I read in Reader's Digest some months ago when I went to my dentist. Eskimos in French are spelt not with a K as the third letter, but with a QU. An odd.
You haven't won friends with us. Yeah.
Is there a gas leak here?
But you set it off if there is.
Yeah, well, it was a hesitation.
It was a hesitation.
I know.
And he kept going for 52 seconds as well. There's no justice in this game. He goes for 52 seconds, gets nothing. Paul gets in with 8 seconds to go. And we're going to get letters from Greenland about that, I'm sure, about the description of those Eskimos. Paul, it was a correct challenge, so I have to give it to you within the rules of just a minute and say you have 8 seconds on Eskimos starting now.
There was a film made in 1922 called Nanook of the North, and it was quite famous at the time for being the world's first documentary.
So Paul Merton got another point, speaking as the whistle went, and has increased his lead, and it's his turn to begin as well. The subject now is how to tell the time in the dark. That's an interesting subject. Give you a second or two to think about it, and have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Well, obviously you look to see where the sun is in the sky. If it's not there, then you can presume it's night time. If you have a luminous watch, this will shine in the dark and will indicate the time of passage that you are particularly enjoying at that moment. Or you can phone Tim. If he doesn't know the time, phone a speaking clock.
Clement challenge.
Repetition of phone.
Yes.
Yes, of course. Right.
Very good reactions from the audience all round here, I think.
Well, what is lovely, they're caught up in the content of the show.
Yes.
And they get...
Just as well, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Stops them throwing things.
Yes. Clement, you had a correct challenge. You have 44 seconds. Tell us something about how to tell the time in the dark, starting now.
How to tell the time in the dark is an essentially simple process. 5 to 8, you say. 9:15. 11 o'clock precisely. What is quite difficult, if there's no light, is to achieve the accurate time.
Your round of applause there was for what you said, Clement, but you paused. You sort of took your laugh and retired. And Wendy, bat challenge first.
Oh, sorry, I've forgotten what's now. I think it was hesitation.
It was hesitation, yes, you just retired from it all. So, Wendy, you have 25 seconds. You tell us something about how to tell the time in the dark starting now.
It's quite easy to tell the time in the dark. One just has to get an illuminated clock, preferably one with the digits showing, so then you can just read and find out where you are, time-wise, that is. The other way I tell the time in the dark is if I hear my dog Shirley start to go downstairs, then I know that I have to get up to give her her breakfast because she's very regular.
So, Wendy Richard was then speaking as the whistle went, has moved forward. She is now in second place, but just only one ahead of Clement Freud and Lisa Tarbach. She trails Paul Merton, and Lisa, your turn to begin. The subject now is twins. Talk about twins on 60 seconds, if you can, starting now.
The famous twins are, of course, Gemini. I have a twin in the back part of my family. Obviously, I mean the word ancestrally. My grandfather was one of a twin. One made it, one of them didn't. My granddad Barney is the remaining...
Paul Challenge.
Did we not have granddad before?
We did have granddad before. Grandfather, was it? Well, so it was granddad then and grandfather then. 46 seconds. Another point to you, by the way, Lisa, for incorrect challenge. Twins is still with you starting now.
It's said that when the eggs form inside the mum, if one twin makes it and the other one doesn't, it's absorbed by the...
Paul Challenge.
Sadly, is repetition of one.
Yes.
Oh, it is.
No, but that is the rules of the game.
It is.
Sorry. You know, if we didn't play by the rules, there would be no game. We haven't just come for the content, we've come for the fun and the challenges. And 39 seconds, Paul, a correct challenge to you. Tell us something about twins starting now.
It was a very popular film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, the concept being because they didn't look anything like each other. What fun and hilarity would ensue when you realised that these two disparate actors were in fact related to... What are you taking your coat off for? By the fact that they were twins. And indeed they were. And what an hilarious film it turned out to be.
Clement Challenge.
Repetition of film.
There was a mention
movie?
of film. Yes, no, not
film.
Movie. No, you did say film. Clement, 20 seconds on twins starting now.
I have grand twins called Max and Harry, who are very similar, and if people say, are they identical, I have to explain that only one of them is. When you see them together, it is extraordinarily easy to say which one is which.
So when do you challenge?
Hesitation, and I think we were coming up for repetition as well.
Oh, Wendy, don't ladle it on, darling. You've got in with 4 seconds to go very cleverly. You've got twins. And you start now.
Molly Sugden's got identical twin sons. I can't remember their names, but...
So Wendy Richard, with other points in the round, and also for one for speaking when the whistle went, has moved forward. She's now only 1 point behind Alida Paul Merton. The other two are only a few points behind. And Wendy, it's also your turn to begin. Market traders. I don't know why that's been chosen for you, but maybe there is some connection which the people abroad won't know about. We all do. Tell us.
Don't you worry, dear. It does go abroad. They'll know what I'm talking about.
Oh, is it shown in India and?
Yes.
And China?
Yes, they learn to speak English watching our programme.
I was told they modelled their English on us in just a minute, actually.
Oh, really?
Is it?
Oh, right. Well, in that case, Nicholas, I shall try harder.
Right. Mockery will get you everywhere. Right. You have market traders. You have 60 seconds starting now.
This programme that I'm in, Market Traders, i.e. it was my father's market trading place first, then my brother took it over, and now my son runs it.
Clement Challenge.
3 mice.
There were 3 mice.
Were there?
Yes, I'm afraid there were, Wendy. Clement, you have something about market traders starting now.
I'm very fond of Berwick Street Market in Soho, where my favourite trader has now gone because the Weights and Measures man has overpowered him with red tape. It's very sad because one used to get all kinds of cheeses, Gorgonzola, Gruyere, Cheddar, Cheshire, Wensleydale.
Wendy challenge.
Look, he's listing again.
I know he is.
I heard it the other day. That's all he does is list.
He does a lot of other things. He's very witty and clever in the show.
I
and
didn't say he wasn't. I'm just saying he lists.
I know he does.
If I can't pause for breath, he can't list.
Wendy, I'm sorry, darling. You're the only clapping or effrontery. You can't come in the show and institute a new rule. Anybody can list if they want to. Actually, it is an extremely difficult thing to do. You try it sometime.
I will. Next time it's my turn, I'll have a list.
And anybody can list. There's nothing in the rules that said you can't do a list. And Clement does it very skillfully, and he still has a subject and a point, of course. Market traders, 27 seconds starting now.
In search of dairy produce, this good man in London W1 asked what I would like to have, and he said, let me give you a list. He said, cream, milk...
Paul challenge.
Repetition of he said. He said and he said.
He said.
Yep.
Right, Paul, you've got in there with 15 seconds. Tell us something about market traders starting now.
My favourite market trader is my local greengrocer. He sells apples, pears, bananas, pomegranates, grapes, red and white, plums, cherries, nuts even. Can you imagine? He sells apricots.
Listing will get you everywhere. Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went again. He's increased his lead at the end of the round. And Paul, your turn to begin. My bath time. That doesn't mean to say it's my bath time, Nicholas Parsons' bath time. You can take the subject any way you like and talk about my bath time starting now.
I like to have a rubber duck, which is, of course, Cockney rhyming slang. What I do is I pour the hot water into the tub, light a scented candle, and lie back in the candlelight, infusing in the fumes. And what a beautiful...
Wendy is challenged.
Did we have candle twice?
Candlelight.
I couldn't hear what he was saying. No, he did say candle and candlelight, so... I think the audience is still laughing at me. Anyway, let's get on. Paul, an incorrect challenge, another point, 46 seconds available. My bath time starting now.
I think it's something that women generally are better at doing it than men because they tend to cover themselves in all kinds of beautiful, smelly substances which create a lovely air of fragrance and relaxes you because, after all, we are some 85% water inside our bodies. So what could be...
Clement Freud challenge.
Speak for yourself.
Paul, it was an interruption. You have another point, 25 seconds. My bath time starting now.
Nicholas Parsons' bath time is, of course, another matter entirely. He likes to pay Oriental boys £50 a time to rub hot liquid into the back of his neck.
Clement, yes.
Repetition of rub. Unless that was rhyming slang.
I don't remember him saying
don't
rub
say rub
before.
before.
No, he smothered themselves in these unguents he talked about, these nice smelly things. He didn't say rub.
No, I didn't say rub.
No, you always look as if you're
Just
trying
in
to
your
bluff me
mind.
out of it, but no, don't say rub. 17 seconds, another point to you, Paul. My bath time starting now.
I can't carry on at the moment because Clement keeps repeating rubber duck to me for some reason. But I shall try and carry on. Perhaps he's involved in one of those CB radios that we used to have in the 1970s when you were a truck driver and you used to transmit to other particular purveyors of those big, heavy vehicles, and they'd say, hello.
So, Paul Merton speaking against the whistle went. He's increased his lead as we move into the final round. He's 3 or 4 ahead of Lisa Tarbuck and 1 ahead of Wendy Richard and Clement Freud, are equal in 3rd place. And Lisa, your turn to begin. This subject, I'm sure it's been chosen especially for you, prejudice. Yes, there's a television programme which has that title. And so, Lisa, talk about it. 60 seconds starting now.
Prejudice is opinion formed before one is in possession of all the actual facts. It's generally based on inadequate ideas, and in my opinion, all prejudice is fueled by assumption. The biggest prejudice is ageism, followed by sexism, racism, homophobia. An amazing prejudice is middle-class confidence, good looks, ugly looks, hairstyles.
And that's
looks.
Paul Chalmers.
Repetition of looks,
There are too
sadly.
many looks there, yes. Paul, you've got 33 seconds. You tell us something about prejudice starting now.
Well, I think Lisa put it very well. It is that kind of approach where you think you know something about a subject, but you don't really pursue it in any great shape or form. And as she says, ageism is perhaps one of the biggest prejudices now. I mean, look at Nicholas Parsons. There he is, one of the few men alive who can remember the old Queen. And I'm not, of course, referring to the present incumbent on the throne, Elizabeth II. I mean the first.
Clement Freud challenge.
He repeated she said quite a long time ago.
In another round?
No, listen. Really did. I didn't want to speak about it for a long time.
I think this is a Freud bluff, isn't it?
No, it really was.
All right, Clement, you have the subject. You have 6 seconds, starting now.
Pride and Prejudice is a book known to many people in this audience at the Drill Hall.
There was a gap where my buzzer was heard.
That's right.
I think we heard Clement
Your buzzer
buzz.
came in before the whistle.
I think we heard Clement buzz whistle. Hesitation.
There was hesitation there, Paul. So you've got in with half a second to go. No, actually 1 second to go on Prejudice, starting now.
It's terrible.
So, as I said, that was to be the last round, so let me give you the final situation here. Very fair. Lisa Tarbuck, Wendy Richard, and Clement Freud all finished up equal in second place. Wasn't that fair? They all got the same number of points. They gave their usual good value, but about 7 or 8 points ahead of them was Paul Merton, so we say, Paul, you're the winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to these 4 intrepid and delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Wendy Richard, Lisa Tarbuck, and Clement Freud. Also thank Janet Staplehurst, who helped me keep the score. She's blown her whistle so delicately and delightfully. We thank our producer-director, who is Claire Jones. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we are also very grateful to this lovely audience here in the Drill Hall near the West End of London, who have, I hope, enjoyed themselves, but they've certainly cheered us on our way magnificently. From me, Nicholas Parsons, from our audience, from our panel, tune in the next time we play Just a Minute.
And you can join Nicholas Parsons when he's joined by panellists Graham Norton, Tony Hawkes, Pam Ayres and Clement Freud. If you can't wait till next Sunday, though, you can hear that edition tomorrow evening at 6:30.